Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive EV live on YouTube, and I'm back from my road trip. Lots and lots of driving. I went from my house all the way to LA, visited some friends there, shot a video with a Fisker Ocean there, although we're going to have to wait to publish it. So stay tuned for that one. And then, of course, we checked out the Cybertruck in Phoenix, Arizona. Then we got to hang out with Aptera in Oceanside. So much fun. And during this entire road trip experience, I've been using the Tesla full self-driving supervised. It's no longer in beta, 12.3. We're so back, Giro. Thank you guys for tuning in. Good to see you all again. And so I've basically clocked a little over, I think, I'm rounding down a little bit, but a little over 1,500 miles now, just with full self-driving supervised. And, boy, where do I begin? I should express from the beginning, because sometimes I criticize things and people go, well, why didn't you record it? Like, especially when you're road tripping, a lot of the driving is long stretches of nothing. And even when you're driving through the city, you could be driving around some place for an hour or 2 hours. And I don't have the camera resources, basically, to be constantly recording at any given moment. So by the time the car does something stupid or crazy, which is usually quickly followed by it doing something impressive or things are going well, you don't get a lot of notice that the car is about to do something crazy or stupid, which means that it's very difficult for you to, at the last second, pull out the camera, start recording, capture that moment. And the alternative is just to be recording all the time, which is kind of a big mess. And especially when you're driving other people around. I had family in the car with me. It's just not really that doable. Jackson says, wait to publish, NDA or just scheduling? No NDAs, but I'll just say I have a source at Fisker that would like to remain anonymous for now. And when certain things happen in Fisker's long and prosperous future, I'll be okay to publish it. So you'll see it. Don't worry. This video won't be scrapped. No matter what happens, it's going to go live. It's just a matter of getting official permission. But no, I didn't sign a contract or anything. I'm just trying to be polite and respectful to my source. It's such a shame that FSD doesn't always work for you. I've had so many zero intervention / takeover drives. I'm so happy for you, by the way. I'm not rooting for its failure. I own a Tesla. I had saved up a bunch of my referral credits with the eventual goal of trying to buy full self-driving outright, which even though that sounds like, oh, he got FSD for free, it really isn't, because all of the things you redeem in the Tesla referral program get added to your taxable income, and Tesla will send you a 1099 the following year. So if I bought full self-driving with my referral credits, it would increase my taxable income by about $12,000. So I'm going to have to pay taxes, basically, on me buying full self-driving. So I get it. Yeah, it's way much cheaper than actually buying it. But still, that was the goal. That was the reason I've saved up my referral credits. That's the reason I haven't gotten the Cyberhammer. That's the reason I haven't gotten premium connectivity. Other Tesla accessories you can buy through that program, I haven't gotten them because that was the intended goal of racking up all these referral credits. And now, after riding around in it for 1,500 miles, I don't even think I want to do it with credits anymore. I hate to be such a Debbie Downer. For the record, I'm still a Tesla shareholder. And if you watched not the last EV podcast, but the last EV podcast I was on, which was 2 episodes ago, I was really excited by my friend Randy and Mike's impressions of it, and I was starting to think in my head, what if I'm wrong? What if full self-driving actually does become 10 times or 100 times safer than a human? What if robo-taxis are real? What's that automotive market was going to look like? I was genuinely getting excited for this update, and if you followed me on Twitter, you'll know that I was really pushing for it and going, please, Tesla, give me this update. I want to experience it. I want to use it on my road trip. So I was super grateful that it was only 2 hours, I think, 2 hours before we left for our road trip, that Tesla officially sent the update to my car. I apologize to everybody who hasn't gotten it yet. I still see those comments. I don't know what to tell you. I just kind of waited. All I know is in order for you to get pushed the update, you just need to be connected to Wi-Fi. And I believe you have to be in a somewhat high state of charge. I'm not entirely sure if that matters, but I noticed that I didn't get as many updates when my car was sitting at lower battery states. So I made sure the car was at a high state of charge and connected to Wi-Fi, and it finally got the update. But driving around cities, where do I begin? Oh my God, there's so many things. It accelerates far too quickly. I was just telling people on Twitter yesterday that it was driving around. I'm back home. I got back home late Sunday night and drove it around a little bit yesterday. I haven't used it today, but yesterday there was it's a more rural area where I live, so I'm finally using it in my own neighborhoods now, opposed to on this big road trip where I used it in the thick of LA traffic. I was not on the freeway for most of the, I mean, for a lot of the driving, yes, it was on the freeway, but there was still several hours I had the car drive me around in the major cities of Phoenix, Los Angeles, and San Diego, and through major cities as we had to get off the freeway to supercharge and everything. And yesterday it accelerated so quickly at kind of like a gravelly stop sign that was a little wet from, people watering their lawn or something, and it straight up peeled out. Like, the back wheels actually lost traction. It made my wife very concerned, and we were kind of used to it accelerating quite a bit, but this is the first time I'd actually heard the wheels slip because of how fast it wanted to accelerate. It's absolutely something that needs to be fine-tuned. I drove some of my family. I have family that live in San Diego. I drove some of them around in it because my uncle is a software engineer, so I was very curious of his thoughts of full self-driving because he's never been in a car that had it before. And he was somewhat impressed by the visualization, which I thought was interesting. He was like, that's cool that it shows you everything it can see. But both him and my cousin in the back seat and my aunt in the back seat complained at pretty much every stoplight and stop sign that this thing accelerates way too fast. Every single time the light turns green, it goes and it wants to push everybody back in their seat. And then you can see when a red light is ahead and you need to start slowing down, and it waits way too long to start slowing down. Again, many of you may argue, well, Drew, it's not crashing if it's accelerating quickly or it's braking too late. As long as it's not crashing, that means it's a successful drive. And I don't know if I agree entirely. I see where you're coming from, that like, okay, maybe the car doesn't drive the way you like, or maybe it doesn't drive the way you drive, but that doesn't mean it can't become a robo-taxi, because it did technically get you to a destination and you didn't technically have to disengage. Maybe you intervened a little bit because you were uncomfortable and you had to push the accelerator, but technically, if it was a robo-taxi and you had no steering wheel and pedals, it would have got you there. And to me, yeah, just like what Alexander is writing in the chat, it's stressful. So turning it on and having people complain by the acceleration or the hard braking or how quickly it goes into a turn, that stress that you gain, or by the way, doesn't notice potholes at all. There is a huge, massive pothole. It's not even exactly a pothole. It's like intentional. It's one of those like storm drain things on my street. But a couple of years ago, or I think it was just last year, my street got repaved, but they didn't, because it's a weird county road or something. It didn't. They didn't extend like the storm drain, so the storm drain doesn't go up. They didn't take out our old street. They just buried it with the new street. So even though it's not really a pothole, it's just a storm drain, it's a big drop in the middle of our street. So I know, because I'm a human and I've driven on my street a million times, that you just kind of turn around that storm drain a little bit. And with full self-driving supervised, it hits that storm drain both directions every time at maximum speed. Even though there's a speed limit sign on my street that says 10 miles per hour, it doesn't pick up on it. It doesn't see it, especially when I'm leaving. And I'm surprised, honestly, that neither way it's able to detect the speed limit sign. and it tries to go 25 miles per hour on a street that you're not supposed to really exceed 10. And when it's going 25 on a street where there's kids playing around and dogs and cats and stuff going across the street, and there's this massive storm drain in the middle, and it loves to slam on it, it's just this big slap in the face to full self-driving performance every time I try to turn it on. It's like, okay, now I gotta wait till I reach the stop sign on my street before I use it. And that brings me to the whole issue of stop signs. Oh, God. Okay. I could talk about this for a while. Yeah, the potholes drive me crazy. I also, unfortunately, I had to drive through LA, which is never a good time anyway. But what made it particularly bad was we were visiting some friends, and they live in an apartment building, and there's this street. And for some reason on this street, they put dumpsters right in the center. Don't ask me why, but it's a road. I'm not saying the road is in perfect conditions, but I'm saying this is a destination that I would need to get to, whether I owned the car or was using a robo-taxi. And there was a giant bag of trash in the middle of the road that somehow didn't make it to the dumpster. There's this big bag of garbage. And I have seen other YouTubers' videos, just like you guys have, of full self-driving's performance. And I was like, oh, well, it'll probably go around that big bag of trash, right? Like, I'm good. The car is smart enough. It has the occupancy network. It'll see those little things. Nope. Went straight to the giant bag of trash. So I had to take over to make sure I didn't run into the... I don't know what's in that bag. It could be broken glass. It could pop my tire. There's no spare tire in the Tesla. So no, I wasn't going to experiment and see. Let's see what actually happens. And I've tried chill mode. I've tried average mode. I tried assertive. Honestly, I didn't notice a huge difference in how it performed. Even with chill mode on, it still accelerates way too fast. Even with chill mode on, it wanted to run right into the garbage can. With assertive, it just feels like it is in a hurry everywhere. Like, we were staying at a friend's house in Phoenix, and even though the speed limit was posted as 25, and it said 25 on the car's display, it would still accelerate to close to 40 miles per hour, even though it said 25. Yeah, live streaming FSD is easier said than done, especially when you live in a place like I do and the bit rate is changing all the time. I will try to document some of the issues I'm having, because I do want to catch a lot of this stuff on video, but again, I was road tripping with family in the car, so it wasn't necessarily an option for me to just tell everyone, okay, be quiet, I'm filming the video, but let me put up my tripod. Also, a lot of my family prefers not to be on camera. Totally understandable, respectable. I'm not going to pressure someone to being in a video if they don't want to be. My Model 3 goes around potholes. Come on, Tesla. That's weird. How come they go around yours, not mine? I don't get it. Do I think full self-driving did better than Autopilot on highway/interstate? To me, it's way better. Well, there's more features added. It's been better for a while, obviously. Regular Autopilot just keeps you between the lines. Obviously, now that I have full self-driving, yeah, there are some things it does that I really, really like. But again, I want to, before I get into the positive side of things I do like. Thank you, Jackson Smith, by the way, for 10 months of support. Very kind of you. Very generous, all the green names in the chat. But yeah, the highway is still on the V11 stack. I don't know if that really is going to change all that much, but technically version 12 is on city streets and version 11 is on the freeway. But I really like the auto lane change, which I don't get with regular Autopilot. It's really nice that whenever I want to get in the left or right lane, I can just signal and the car does it. I love little detail that really goes a long way that makes road tripping, especially when you're on the freeway, so much more relaxing, is the fact that the car, when it passes a semi-truck, it hugs to the left a little bit. Love that. Oh my God, it sounds like such a little detail, but makes it so much easier to pass all those semi-trucks when you don't have to worry about the car trying to just, as long as I'm equal distant between these two lines. Also, the lane drift has gone away a lot more. It still happens occasionally, but with regular Autopilot and a lane opens up, the car wants to swing into it, because with regular Autopilot, it just thinks, I need to be equal distant from this line to this line, which I don't know why they coded it that way, because I was taught as a driver never to just try to stay in the middle of the lane at all times. I was taught always to stay about 2 feet away from the center line. So even if, you know, another lane opens up or there's a wider lane than usual, you're supposed to stay fixed towards the center line. You're not supposed to try to center yourself between the two lines. But yeah, with version 11 or 12, or with the free trial version of FSD, the lane drift isn't as bad as Autopilot. Auto lane change is super handy, and I love the way it makes a little bit more space for the semi trucks, which is totally something I do. That's how I drive as a human, and I love the fact that it did that. A few other things that really I enjoy and impressed me was its ability to detect if someone is trying to enter the road that you're already on. It seems to like to let people go, which is very polite and very respectful, which was quite noticeable through LA, actually. There was a lot of stoplights that we had to go through because the interstate got all blocked up. And there were so many circumstances where, it's bumper to bumper traffic, so you're not really going to be losing out on that much time by letting someone in. But, someone would be coming out of like a drive-through or a parking lot, and the Tesla would see that they're trying to enter, and it would slow down a little bit, let the person in, and then continue. And that experience was super smooth, super reliable. And I was like, okay, this is cool. Like, people are waving at me, like, thank you, thanks for letting me in. And I'm like, I didn't even have to do anything. That now there's like a positive interaction I'm getting because of the way the car is driving, which unfortunately that wasn't the regular. What tended to happen, particularly at stop signs, which I was tweeting about earlier today, and there's multiple problems, both the government's fault and Tesla's fault simultaneously, but the way the Tesla handles stop signs honestly makes it kind of a deal breaker. Like, at least in its current form, I kind of don't even want to use it anymore after 1,500 miles, even though it's free. I've already reached a point where, I was driving my wife to work after I was just doing a little public speaking event thing. And my wife needed to be dropped off at work afterwards. And she straight up got in the car. And I think the wife test is always like a good indication of, okay, here's what the nerds think. What do the real people, what do the everyday consumers think? And my wife said, can you drive instead of the car? Because I want to get there on time. She straight up didn't want the car to drive on this particular case because we were a little pushed for time. And I don't think that's really a new report. I think lots of people have indicated that. But there's been so many times with stop signs where it stops way too far behind the stop line where you can't see a thing, even as a human. Even with the best eyes, it's like, okay, you stopped way back here. You've got people behind you, so they're already annoyed that you're stopping too early. And you stopped so soon that you can't tell if it's clear to go. You need to creep out way, way, way further. So it comes to a complete stop way too early to the point where you can't see, and then it has to creep, and it creeps very slowly. So it starts creeping over the line to see if it's clear, and then I can see that it's clear. It's creeped out so much that I'm like, yep, you're good. I can see there's no one coming for like 5 miles in either direction. You gotta go now. You gotta go. And it doesn't. It just keeps creeping and creeping and creeping. And then it'll get almost all the way into like where traffic would be, and it's like, okay, at this point just commit, like you're already in the road, like there's no point in creeping. And I think it's because of the position of the cameras. I've seen Chuck Cook talk about this with his Cook style left turns, and I've experienced it so many times over the last week, where it has to keep on creeping, look and look and look, because the cameras are not mounted far enough ahead on the vehicle to be able to look down and see if the roads are clear to go. So it's like failure on multiple points for me. It's like, for one, yes, the NHTSA forced Tesla to come to a complete stop at stop signs, which is not human-like behavior. Go to any stop sign in America, and you will see 95% of drivers do not come to a complete stop. They idle down to about 1 mile per hour, and then they creep, and then if it's clear, they go. So the NHTSA is one problem with the stop signs. I don't care really whose fault it is. It's still a problem. If the NHTSA is going to mandate that for autonomous vehicles, that is going to substantially affect the take rate of FSD and also the usability of robo-taxis. If the government pushes things like that, it's annoying and it makes it hard to sell the feature. Secondly, I think it's partially Tesla's fault because the side repeater cameras are not far enough mounted on the vehicle. they're behind where your head is. And most of the time when we're creeping or trying to check for oncoming traffic, we lean way forward in our cars to see if we can clear it. And the cameras that are trying to look down the road are behind where your eyes would be if your head was all the way against the headrest. So how Chuck Cook described it, which I think was pretty accurate, is imagine going to some of these like blind corners where you can't see all that well, trying to stop behind the stop line every time, and now duct tape your head to the headrest. If you were like, your head was glued to the headrest of the car and you had to see if it was clear, oh my God, I don't think you'd feel comfortable driving. I know I wouldn't. There's so many places where even though I can lean super far forward and I can move my head past the steering wheel even, I know a bunch of places where it's still pretty sketchy whether or not you can see around the corner, but there are places where people drive and have to go all the time. And I think there's a hardware limitation with that. And I agree with Chuck Cook, who more recently has been saying that I think the current camera layout will prohibit any present day Tesla from ever achieving level 4, level 5. It's a guess. Again, we could be wrong. I don't feel super confident either way, but at this point, if I had to gauge based on my previous 1,500 miles, I don't believe my vehicle will ever be a level 4 or level 5 autonomous vehicle. Are the cameras in the rearview mirror not wide angle? Do those not help? Well, not if you're at a stop sign looking down the street to see which, are any cars coming down the road. That's when you need to be able to do this, which the cameras on the Tesla can't do very well. Steering wheel here, I'm inching out into oncoming traffic. I have to go past the stop line a little bit. Now you're doing this. So the rear cameras, even if they're ultra wide, aren't going to help that much. Do you think we need more cameras in the front? Oh, definitely. I would say, there's multiple problems with that. On one hand, I would say probably as far as you possibly can. Not only would a front bumper camera be helpful, which the Cybertruck has, but no other Tesla has, and Tesla's on the record claiming that hardware 3 is good enough to be a robotaxi. I think that promise is probably going to come back to haunt them, because I don't think it is. But not only would a bumper camera be great, but also left and right facing cameras as far up as you can possibly get them on the front of the car as possible. There's little repeater cameras, the little black triangle. I think, why don't I pull up some footage here? I didn't get a great shot of it, but at one point, basically my car almost drove straight into the curb. I hope you guys believe me. I know some people are probably just going to say, oh, well, Drew hates full self-driving. That's why he saved up all his referral credits for it. But no, at this point, it's definitely not worth $200 a month. And the everyday people that I let ride around in it were very uncomfortable and very skeptical of it before, and even more so after, my cousin and my aunt and uncle getting out of the car after I let the car drive them around. We're kind of like, okay, that's enough of that. I'm done with this. So I don't think it was a huge selling point. I'm kind of confused why Elon thought this was the version that they needed to, send out so everybody can experience. Now it's no longer in beta. This is the version we need everyone to try. I'm kind of like, really? This was everybody was hyping it up like it's a big deal, and it's probably much better than version 11. I don't doubt that, but okay, I think this is it. My wife had just started recording. She recorded because I wanted to get a shot of the car doing a U-turn, but in the process of doing so, you can kind of see it right here on the right side of the screen. There's this curb material all throughout the middle of the street. And you can see on the visualization, it does not render it out. So you can just barely see it in the corner. It's not my wife's fault. She didn't expect the car to try to drive into the curb. But if I feel very confident at this particular drive that if I didn't take over, it would have gone. Yeah, you can see right there. It just starts rendering out the curb. But if I didn't take over right there, I know very confidently the car was going straight towards that curb. At the very least, it would have destroyed our rims, which I'm not excited. I'm not excited for to happen. So that was an instance where it was like, straight at the curb, and then at the last second I went, and I think my wife even said something in that clip. I'll just play the whole clip.
Yikes.
Oh,
That was
film it almost hitting the curb.
Did you get it?
Yeah.
So she saw it too. The U-turn was good, very slow.
And it's on chill mode.
But yeah, it did technically make the turn. So after I took over and prevented it from hitting the curb. Have I X'd your findings on X to Elon? I would. No, he won't listen to me because I don't have a check mark. Those rims are probably $16,000. I'm sure they're not that much, but I don't want to damage my rims. I'm not that kind of FSD. Am I allowed to say beta tester? Because they removed beta. Why would you remove beta when it still makes these kinds of mistakes? Also, yeah, I had a ton of issues with visibility. Where you live in a place like I do and there's long rural roads that aren't well lit. If the cameras can't see enough, like it's just dark outside, it'll just straight up beep at you every 20 seconds. Full self-driving performance degraded. And then it just started raining like a little bit. We just had some light rain and the car kept beeping over and over and over again. Performance degraded, performance degraded. Every 20 seconds it had to audibly beep. And when it does that audible beep, it doesn't listen to like the Joe mode. It doesn't like keep it quiet even with Joe mode enabled. It wakes up everybody else in the car. I was driving late at night. People were trying to sleep. It kept waking them up repeatedly, and there was no way to get it to shut up. Very frustrating for late at night. I think we did grab video of that, so I'll pull that up here. FSD was degraded. Yeah, it doesn't have to rain hard either. And then it goes away immediately sometimes. Yep, there it beeps again. You can see some light rain. This pop-up, oh my god. Over and over and over again. All night. It was killer. She couldn't get it in focus, but... And it would still drive. It was still working, but the pop-up was quite frustrating. And you can see the rain was not, like, heavy. It was, like, fairly light rain. So I think that's just a poor design of the UI to just be like, just beep at them over and over again. And of course the rain wipers have still been quite buggy where there won't be a cloud in the sky and it'll start moving the wipers again. Thankfully they let you actually turn them off while on autopilot now. But still every hour or so it would kick back on when there's no rain, then I would shut it off again. No, the auto wipers are not working well at all. Gary in New York says, that's why it's supervised. My experience this past week was pretty good. I've had FSD since the early public days. I have fun with it. I mean, I agree. It's a fun party trick, but I'm sorry. I'm not paying $200 a month for a party trick. And at this point, I'm not even really interested, especially on the drive home where it started beeping over and over again when the sun went down. And it did some really weird stuff when we were almost home where... First of all, it had to like get into a right lane and really slow down because it's a sharp turn and it was not slowing down. And I was like, okay, even if you do make this turn, we're going to like get our wheels off the ground. And it's like 11 o'clock at night. There's people trying to sleep in the car. I didn't want to do that. So I just shut it off. And I was like, at this point, I don't even think I want to use referral credits on it. Like I would rather use those credits on anything else, really. Doesn't it need cameras pointing to the sides as well, not just straight forwards? Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Freak Waka. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. The problem, I think, with putting cameras so far forward on the bumper is because it's so forward on the vehicle, it's probably more likely to get dirt and mud on it, so they got to add wiper fluid to it and that kind of stuff. The Cybertruck has washer fluid mounted to the front camera, not the back camera. Everyone's like, just put it on the back camera. And I'm like, well, it's part of a tailgate too, so that might cause problems with, you want to have a tailgate, a moving part, and you want to route some kind of fluid all the way to the back and you refill it from the front. I don't know. I can see why they didn't want to put it on the back, but especially if you're off-roading a lot, you're probably going to kick up a bunch of mud on the front. some on the back, but probably less. Uh, you have a problem with your cabin camera. I had the same issue on dark roads. I got it replaced and it's fine. In the IR, it's the infrared it emits. I don't think there's an infrared being emitted. I don't also understand what the cabin camera would have to do with running into the curb. Any predictions on Model 3 Ludicrous release date this week? I'm honestly shocked they haven't announced it yet. I know they filmed an event. They were actually filming an event with MKBHD in Malibu while I was in LA. I saw, excuse me, I'm still not fully recovered yet. I got pretty sick last week. Excuse me. I must have caught a bug from the Fisker Ocean. But I was only about 30 minutes away from the event they were filming for the Model 3 Ludicrous. I'm shocked it hasn't been announced yet. I honestly think it could be any time now. It could be tonight. Sometimes Tesla launches stuff at like 7 p.m. So I was tempted to just like figure out where they were filming it and just show up, but I was like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the guy that has to get escorted out by security. And we were hanging out with our friends anyway, so I was like, we could go check it out. But I did bring it up to my wife. I was like, hey, they're filming like right now in Malibu the Ludicrous event, and she was like, should we go? And I was like, I wasn't invited, so I kind of talked her out of it. Probably shouldn't go around crashing events. Zoox's toaster design is perfect for robotaxi sensor layout, occupant capacity, says Mike. Yeah, I think they probably designed it that way from the beginning. I don't think the Zoox is really meant for much highway travel, though. It's definitely not very aerodynamically shaped for high-speed travel. I think Zoox was kind of optimized for driving around cities at 30 to 40 miles per hour, which is fine for a lot of people. That's all you need. The infrared on dark roads is so the system knows you are paying attention. If it can't see you, it doesn't know your status. The cabin camera is supposed to put out infrared. Mine wasn't. Weird. I don't want to go to a service. I don't live close to a service center, so now I got to go to a service center to get the beeping to stop showing up. I don't know. I went to a service center 3 times to try to stop the wind noise from my car, and they didn't fix it after 3 service visits, so... Did I see any refresh Model 3 on the road? Oh, yeah. I did not see any Ludicrous, but on the route I take on I-5, I must have seen probably 50 different refreshed Model 3s on the backs of trailers. And through LA, there were a lot of refreshed Model 3s just driving around, not on trailers. Someone asked earlier how many Cybertrucks I saw. It was surprising, honestly, how frequent they were. I know that the Cybertruck came out like end of November, but I thought production was going to ramp pretty slowly. And I don't know the numbers officially. I know people are estimating they're at something like 300 a week or 400 a week maybe, or maybe more. But it feels like more, at least out on California, because we probably saw a Cybertruck about once every hour or two. And I saw several semi-trucks that were hauling 4 Cybertrucks each on the back. And then aside from the semi-trucks, I was also seeing about 1 Cybertruck an hour going the other direction. I never saw one like going the same direction as me, and I never saw a Cybertruck at a Supercharger, which was a bummer because that would have been cool to actually see one parked so I could get up closer to it. Other than, of course, the Cybertruck I got to drive in Phoenix. That was fun. No, I didn't see any with the white interior. I don't know if they're making those yet, but I didn't get close enough to any of them. They all look black from what I remember. I've yet to have FSD pull into a parking lot and park itself like other YouTubers. Yeah, for the record, if you expect to develop a vehicle that is capable of driving itself to the Supercharger, and then you just need someone to plug it in, either a random stranger or the Tesla bot's going to plug it in. Currently, right now, I would say 90%, maybe more, probably 90% of the time, Full Self-Driving could not get the car to the Supercharger. I wanted it to, because I thought that'd be really cool, and I'd heard about, like you said, other people saying, oh, Full Self-Driving can park itself now. It'll get to its destination and park. Pretty much the only time I've seen it do that is if it can parallel park, which supercharging is pretty much never parallel parking. Every time I navigated to a Supercharger, it would get somewhat into the parking lot, and then it would get confused and start going the wrong way, or it would just slow down until it stopped. So I had to take over to actually get it to where the superchargers were. And I was like, if you want to make a robotaxi with no pedals, no steering wheel, you're going to have to figure that part out. And currently it is definitely not capable of doing that. Also, I think would become a hard sell if Tesla's goal with the free trial is let's get everybody a chance to try out FSD and they'll really like it. But then it turns out that you have to take over every single time that you stop to charge on a road trip. That adds up. So all these edge cases that really start stacking up between can't navigate itself to the actual supercharger, just the parking lot that the supercharger's in, drives itself very dangerously close to curbs, and there's other people on Twitter that have actually reported it driving into curbs and damaging rims. And there was a supercharger we were leaving in LA where it couldn't see that the sidewalk had raised up on a part of the exit, and it tried to go right over the sidewalk, so I had to take over. The way it handles stop signs with the double stop, which confuses other drivers. I got honked at. I had people that didn't know when it was their time to go because I would stop and they think it would be time to go, and then the car would start going, and then they would stop, and then it would stop. And there was so much confusion because of those stupid stop signs, which I think is a double whammy, which makes it really hard to recommend because unfortunately there's a lot of stop signs on American roads, especially where I live. I have to go through probably 4 stop signs in the first mile leaving my house, or something like, maybe it's 2 miles, but there's a lot of stop signs where I live. And the fact that it handles each one that awkwardly, where an HTSA says you have to stop behind the line, but then the Tesla has to creep for visibility, but then the cameras are so bad it can't tell if it's actually clear or not. So I'm like, you can go, you can go, you can go, you can go. And it's like, I don't know. So I personally think there is, I don't know if it's about necessarily having more cameras, but at least better positioned cameras, so that it could, what would be great is if the car could actually see better than I could. Because if the goal is to make the car safer than a human, I would say one way to make the car a lot safer than a human would be to make sure that it can see better than I can. And so far, but pretty much every stop sign I go to, I can see better than the car can. Comments on Tesla engineer confirming Cybertruck battery pack is currently half full, as was originally seen in Monroe teaser. I didn't watch the Monroe teaser. I'm not exactly sure what they mean by half full. I think it's half empty. No. I really like the Cybertruck, by the way. It's a shame I don't make enough to afford one, but yeah, after driving it in particular, it's like every time I see one, I love it more. I've been watching a ton of Cybertruck content. It's an amazing vehicle. I'm not trying to be too pessimistic about it, but I don't know what it means by half full. Like there was room for double the cells, or in the places where there could be more cells, there was nothing. I don't know, but does it shock me that there's a way for them to put more 4680s in the Cybertruck? No, not exactly. I mean, I always thought from the beginning there'd be a way to increase the size of the pack. I didn't expect it to be by that much. I didn't think there was enough volumetric space to double the battery pack. That's pretty insane. But it also doesn't shock me that they are not putting in a ginormous battery pack. Like, for instance, if they doubled it, it would be like 246 kilowatt hours. To be exact, round up a little bit. I guess it'd be 250 kilowatt hours if they doubled up the pack size. But that is not very economical. For one, it would increase the weight of the vehicle, I'm sure, by a lot. So it would become much less efficient and wear out your tires faster, messes with the suspension. The battery pack's pretty heavy, so if you just doubled up the number of cells, you'd probably have to tune the suspension completely differently. It affects your charging curve by a large margin. That's already kind of a weird side effect of the Cybertruck currently, is that it's an 800 volt car, but pretty much only gets charged at 400, 500 volt stations. So they have to split the pack pretty much every time they charge it. And there's really no true V4 superchargers on the road at this point. There's some V4 dispensers that I've seen and checked out, but on the back end, they're all still V3, which means even when the Cybertruck goes to the, alleged V4 supercharger stations, they still don't pull much more than about 250 kilowatts, which I've heard people tell me that it can pull a lot more than that. I've seen some evidence that when they take it to CCS stations, if you can find a working one that's capable of outputting, at 800 volts, then the Cybertruck can charge at about 330 kilowatts, but it doesn't hold it very long. So already they're struggling to get the pack to charge at like a proper speed. So if you doubled the size of the battery pack, it would probably just take even longer to charge. So I understand why, at least with the Foundation series, they're not starting with a massive battery pack. But engineering-wise, they're probably ready to make that switch whenever 4680 cells get cheap enough. But I'm guessing right now they are not that cheap. I mean, they're probably... Because Tesla's the one manufacturing them, and Tesla's going to have their own lithium refinery online in Texas pretty soon, and, the cathode plant at Giga Texas and everything. Tesla's probably got the cheapest 4680s, or the cheapest cells in the business, because they're the ones manufacturing them straight at Giga Texas. As they're building the Cybertruck, they're building the cells, so that kind of vertical integration is really hard to find elsewhere. But even so, I wouldn't be surprised if, putting in a 200 kilowatt hour pack into the Cybertruck right now would make it essentially impossible to turn a profit unless they sold it for, $200,000, which, hey, knowing Tesla, maybe they should have. But I'll just say, because Tesla made the right call because they have so many orders to fill. I know they said they're not cell constrained, but still, they probably would be cell constrained if they insisted on having a 200 kilowatt hour pack on every truck. The wait time for the Cybertruck would be much, much longer if they had to put that many cells in each truck. So I think it was the right call to put in about 120, considering how efficient the Cybertruck is. It's able to get pretty decent range, in my opinion. I had my expectations in check. The problem, I think, with the Cybertruck community was everybody was holding on to that unveil event back in 2019 way too closely. I think that's partially Tesla's fault. They didn't temper expectations sooner. They decided, we'll just tell everyone the new range, the night deliveries start, which was not a good idea. I think they should have prefaced the production specs a lot sooner so that there wasn't this big, massive wave of disappointment at the last second. But I was going into the Cybertruck launch saying, I think about 300 miles is what they'll target for the launch edition. And I think it'll be very expensive because the demand's very high. So it'll probably be somewhere between $100,000 or $120,000. That's roughly what ended up happening. And then the range extender I did not expect. But honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if the range extender gets scrapped. Did I see Kyle Connor's R2 video where he got to see the software and sit? I was halfway through it. I'm watching a bunch of content right now, but yeah, I love the Rivian software. It looks fantastic. I want to know when ultrasonic sensors is getting the auto park perks. Yeah, I don't understand why they leave us out. We have all the exact same hardware of the cars that don't have ultrasonic sensors. It's like, just ignore the ultrasonics if it doesn't need them. Like, why do you have to give us the inferior software package because we have more hardware than necessary? Like, come on. What if they put the cameras in the headlight area? Would that give a better line of sight? You probably fix some problems, but create new ones because the headlights are on the front, but they're not in the way of a windshield wiper in any way. I wonder how they handle with rain and the headlights being on with the glare. I don't know. That I haven't seen a perspective of what it's like to put the cameras right into the headlight. But yeah, in good weather, that would probably help immensely. But from something I've learned from following full self-driving updates for all these years, it's been almost 4 years now that we've had the whole beta program and stuff like that, is there's typically no shortcuts. There's never like just do this, problem solved. It's like, no, if you want to add a new camera, if you want to update the hardware, you've got to start everything all over again. And I don't think it's that simple to just add a new camera, because now you're adding a new perspective that the Hardware 3 self-driving computer was not trained to interpret. Now you don't have any miles driven using those cameras as access points. So I don't think it's that modular. I could be wrong, but I don't think it's that scalable when you have all of this training based on the same 8 cameras and the same camera placement on each car. And then you suddenly just go, oh, okay, we'll just add a couple more cameras. Now the whole software suite basically has to restart the training because now it has to interpret 10 cameras instead of 8 cameras, and now it has to increase, or it throws off the frame rate that it's able to process at because the computer was not trained to just be able to handle, oh, here's a couple more perspectives to throw in at you. And that's part of the reason the Cybertruck, despite being out for, 5 or 6 months now, still doesn't have basic autopilot. Even the basic just keep the Cybertruck between the lines still can't even do that because, again, there's no shortcuts with full self-driving. There's no like, oh, well, easy solution is just do this. No, every tiny little change, especially when it comes to hardware, every tiny little change you make, every tiny little update. I think the biggest problem with the Cybertruck is probably that it's steer-by-wire. So you can't just put the same exact code in the Cybertruck because it's going to think it needs to steer this much, and in reality, because it's dynamic, it sometimes has to steer this much and other times has to steer this much. So I don't understand why, at least for highway speeds, they can't just say, well, let the Cybertruck have the same turning characteristics as a Model 3 and Y. That way it works at least when you're on the freeway, and just have autopilot work over a certain speed or something. But no, it can't even do that. And yeah, I think that this code is far more complicated and far harder to make right than people realize, including Elon. And I think he probably got really, really excited after like a 10-minute drive he had with 12.3 and said, oh my God, how are more people not trying this right now? So he decided right then and there, give everyone a free month so that their minds can be blown like mine are. And he probably didn't use it for like, a huge road trip because if he did, he'd probably find all the kinds of issues and mistakes that I've found. Mike says, just grab some Cybertruck raffle tickets with them credits you were saving for FSD. Yeah, I've thought about it, honestly. I really do not deserve a Cybertruck. I'm not the kind of guy that would put a Cybertruck to good use because I'd pretty much just drive it around the same way I drive my Model 3. It's very fun. It's very eye-grabbing, that's for sure. But it was actually, meeting up with Gregor Truck, it's a genuine problem how much attention it attracts. It's actually something I'm kind of worried about with the Aptera because I really am excited for it and I really want an Aptera and I would utilize an Aptera, but I do not like the amount of attention the Cybertruck generates. I saw the YouTube videos and I was like, oh, well, he lives in some place where no one's heard of it, so of course he gets attention, or he's just filming it because he's a YouTuber, so that's why it generates that much attention. But no, we just met up with Gregor Truck in a parking lot and immediately had, like 5, 6, 7 people all coming up asking questions and wanting to touch it. And it was like, hold on a second. Like, we're not able to film anything because everybody wants to keep talking and asking questions. So we had to go to the other side of the parking lot just to get away from people. And people still were like following us around, coming up to the truck. And it was like, I don't know if I'd like this. Especially when driving it around, there were people filming and kind of getting close to the truck. And I was like, yeah, this isn't even a good problem anymore. Like some people think, oh, haha, problem with the Cybertruck, it attracts too much attention. Like, no, unironically, this is a real problem. It's getting kind of annoying. And I was only hanging out with Greg for a couple hours. But like, we went to get lunch after the video, and there were people coming up where we went to lunch. And it was like, okay, we can't even keep our conversation going here because people want to keep asking questions. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'd like this. He's had to experience this like every day for the past 6 weeks. And I was getting annoyed after a couple hours. I would get kind of tired of it personally. I don't like attracting that much attention to myself. People use trucks for all different purposes. Don't diminish your own use cases. My use case is drive me and my wife to the grocery store and my friend's house and back. I don't really think I'd use the truck part of it. I don't think I don't know. The raffle would be cool if I won, but I don't think I'd win. So yeah, the attention would get old. I think double the battery pack, just like the Silverado, good for towing, like shown by Autospec. Well, it's not that. It's not a matter of can we fit the battery pack a 250 kilowatt hour pack in a truck. The question is, should you? Is it economical? Is it practical, especially with the charging speed limitations? I think Tesla made the right call. I think it makes sense when 4680s are much, much, much cheaper and the V4 superchargers are built out to some scale. That's when it would start to become practical to ship a Cybertruck with 200 plus kilowatt hours. But right now, I don't think it would make sense right now. I did a whole video on the whole electric pickup truck towing situation, which is just, it sucks right now regardless. Whether you use a Silverado EV or a Cybertruck, EV towing is not going to be fun. Because of the way charging stations are laid out, because we still don't have an agreed upon charge port standard, because of the inconsistent charging experiences with pickup trucks. It's not going to go well at all right now. So if it's not going to go well at all, might as well use the more efficient, more cost-effective battery pack, which is what Tesla did, and keep the weight down while the energy density of the cells is not that great. And I'm sure it'll get better and cheaper over time as they scale up and ramp up production. And once they scale up and ramp up the V4 dispensers and cabinets on the back end, that's when it might start making more sense to build trucks with huge battery packs like that. EV trucks are dumb now, but I don't think they always will be. It's just EVs naturally focus on what the most efficient form factors are first, because that's where most of the motivations are. That's where most of the advantages would be shown. So making a long-range towing electric truck today doesn't make a lot of sense, but I don't think that means it never will. It's just we're waiting on infrastructure, we're waiting on better charging, better software, because towing things is like the opposite of efficiency. It's like you throw off your aero, you throw off the powertrain, and there's no amount of aerodynamic cheating you can do to make a towing experience more efficient, because there's so many different trailer sizes and trailer shapes to account for. So end of story, you need a big battery pack if you want to do long distance towing, but that's only part of it. You're still going to need fast charging, otherwise you're going to have to stop and wait for several hours, and then people will complain that, okay, it's still faster to tow with a gas truck. And then simultaneously you need infrastructure that's capable of recharging massive battery packs like 200, 250 kilowatt hours within a reasonable amount of time, which, you know, when you're consuming a kilowatt hour per mile, you're going to need some really fast charging. So Silverado EV is like the closest we have, but I don't believe GM's going to make a lot of those anyway. It's not cost effective right now. GM's canceled lots of things in the past. It wouldn't shock me at all if they cancel the Silverado, just because it's not financially feasible. It's not very profitable. Ram is targeting a 229 kilowatt hour pack for 500 mile rev. Yeah, big battery pack is part of the equation, but like I said, there's three things you need. You need good charging infrastructure that's reliable and fast, which we definitely don't have right now, especially if you want like a 230 kilowatt hour pack. You need a really fast charging EV that's capable of accepting a high current, and then hopefully an EV that has the software to be able to tell you, hey, here's a station with a pull-through for your trailer, which theoretically in the future they could do. Tesla could, when you put your Cybertruck in tow mode or trailer mode, it could flag you or route you to the superchargers that have pull-through stalls and say there's pull-through stalls available at this location. That way you don't have to unhook the trailer every time you stop. And then of course you need a truck with a big battery, which right now is very difficult to do profitably. I'm pretty much I'm so certain that the Silverado EV is not profitable to make. That's why they're not building that many of them, and they're keeping them to fleet use cases and that kind of stuff. So you need all three. You can't just say, oh, big battery, problem solved. There's a bunch of problems that all need to be solved before EV towing makes sense, and that's just probably the last thing that EVs will cover. I think long distance towing with pickup trucks is going to be the last vehicles on the road with combustion engines. Like couple decades from now, if there's still some gas engines on the road, it's going to be because people need long distance towing with their pickup truck, and it's just so much faster and so much more practical to have a big gas tank that you can fill up in 5-10 minutes, and you know that all the gas pumps are probably going to be pretty trailer friendly, and you can just go and go and go because there's so much energy you can store in gasoline. And that's why I kind of understand what Ram's going for with the hybrid approach, like a gas generator powering a big battery pack. I think if you're doing long distance towing, that's probably the best argument for a hybrid. But if you're just making a sedan or a crossover, I'd say just go full electric. We don't need to fuss around with hybrids for commuter vehicles or even just road trips, that because you can road trip with an EV. Even a fairly low range EV is pretty easy to road trip with. I can say from experience, as someone with like a 250 mile range Model 3, road tripping is fine. And it only gets better when you have higher end EVs like the Model Y long range or the Model 3 long range, because those charge even faster and they go longer for stuff like that. Account for the trailer with a modifiable bed cover to allow for better airflow over the towing rig. Yeah, you can specify it like that, but there's still going to be a bunch of people that are towing and say, well, I can't do a trailer like that. For my job or for my workflow, I need this specific kind of trailer, this type of trailer. If I have to buy some other trailer, it's not going to be worth it, So it depends on the market. So you can get really specific, but still it throws off everything when you have a trailer back there. I don't think GM made any money on EVs outside of the Bolt, and that took years. I don't think they were making money on the Bolt. They had the most expensive recall in vehicle history. It was like $2 billion to replace all the Bolt battery packs, and then they canceled it. Everyone begged for them to bring it back, so they said, okay, we will bring it back eventually. But I don't think they would have canceled the Bolt when it was selling at all-time high volumes if they were making money on it, personally. Let's see. I'm living off-grid with the Cyberlander. Good luck. I hope that works out. I just bought a 2023 ID4 for $33,000 as they were getting rid of them, coming from a 2011 Honda CR-V. I've been loving the tech and all the safety features, going on a 1,000-mile road trip soon. Any advice? Yeah, pray that Electrify America is working. I hope so. That's a good one. Thank you for the super chat, Taker, by the way. This free month has got to improve FSD, though. I don't know. I hope so. But from what I've noticed with FSD, there's a lot of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And sometimes there's updates where you get 1 step forward, 2 steps back. There's part of me wonders and tries to remind people that with this FSD development, at any time, we could hit another local maximum. Tesla doesn't really know what a local maximum, when they're about to hit another local maximum. They probably thought they were, on the brink of some big reveal when they got rid of all the manual code and did nothing but neural nets from top to bottom. They said, okay, this is the big update. And, now I finally have it in my car. And I'm like, yeah, okay, pretty cool sometimes. But then it does this, then it does this. And I had to take over for this and that and this. And it's like, okay, well, now that none of the code is being written by hand and it's just a big neural net, now there's a lot of those baked in limitations. How can you go in and fix it if it's not written by hand anymore? Now you just got to hope that you can throw more data at the neural nets and that'll solve your problem, but maybe it doesn't. That's what a local maximum would be. It's like you've reached the peak performance with this current hardware. And that's why I've always said it's not a good idea for Tesla to claim that, yes, this will achieve level 4, level 5. You don't know that. You're hoping it does. We're all hoping it does. That would be great if it did, but we really don't know if it will. And especially after seeing how poorly it does at stop signs, and I don't know how Tesla's going to change NHTSA's mind, and I don't know how they're going to improve the creepability when the cameras are positioned in the way they are. It's like, that's kind of just a problem with the way it's designed. I don't know how you can fix that. I mean, we can shake our fist at the government, but that's what we do with public transportation too, and military spending being out of control, and people wanting more attention brought to the food and drug industry and health insurance, that kind of stuff. Yeah, we can shake our fist and say, well, that's the government's problem. Yeah, but at the end of the day, here's how the feature works. It's kind of stuck with that problem now. I don't think there's really a way for them to fix it via an update. Mine doesn't even do U-turns. It tells me to take over each time. That's fascinating because I've had a few successful U-turns. It's weird how inconsistent it is. But yeah, I did have a time at one point where it was driving somewhere, I forget where, and it just straight up said, unable to complete maneuver, please take over. And I was like, oh, So we're out of beta, but you can also just like back out at any time and go, I don't know. You figure it out. I remember taking over there being like, can you imagine if I paid for this? Imagine if you spent like $12,000 and then took it on that road. Improve the creepability. That's really what it is. Makes me wonder if version 12 is different for different people. I just did a trip from San Diego to Joshua Tree to Los Angeles. That's almost exactly the route I took. And back to San Diego with only one missed exit on the freeway. Well, unfortunately, if you want it to be widespread, it's not a matter of how good it is for one person. It's a matter of how good it is for everybody. Especially if you want to legalize a level 3 or level 4 autonomous driving system. It has to be consistently good for everybody. It can't just be good for a couple people. I got caught in Instagram doom scroll. What did I miss? Before, I can't believe I've been live for an hour already. There's just so much to talk about. But we could keep talking about that. You guys can ask about whatever you want. But there were some questions that were pre-asked by the supporters of the channel. Of course, you guys start commenting more and more now that the live stream has begun. So let's see. I'll start with the oldest comments first. How about that? So all of you last second comment submitters have to wait. All right. Giro Power says, RJ's insistence that curbside charging will be the norm, so therefore charge port location on the R1, R2 is fine where it is baffling to me. But then Tesla supposedly making cable extenders for V3 superchargers and installing V4 superchargers, so I don't even know anymore. I did not hear RJ insist. I've been hearing most recently from the media rounds they've been doing in interviews that RJ is still open for feedback. He was still saying on the record that, like, yeah, if enough people tell us to move the charge port location, we'll move it, which doesn't surprise me because RJ is amazing, Rivan is amazing, and they're very good at listening to their community, which is why I was trying to be so outspoken about the charge port location. And I think if we bring it up to RJ enough, they will probably move it to the correct location, which is driver's side rear. Yeah, curbside charging is a really weird argument because there's not a lot of curbside charging. Most DC fast charging, which is, you know, how most people are going to road trip with this thing, not with curbside charging. You know, most people are going to charge from home majority of the time, not on the curb. And then outside of home charging, you're road tripping. And then the most common DC fast charging locations are Tesla superchargers. And all those superchargers are optimized for driver side rear. So driver side rear is the most compatible with the existing infrastructure. Curbside charging is also a moving target. There are some one-way streets where you park on the left side. So now if there was chargers on the left side, you couldn't reach if you put it on the passenger side rear. And if you're planning on shipping this vehicle to other markets and other countries, there are certain countries that are right-hand drive. So people would be parking on the other side of the road. So for curbside charging, then actually having it on driver's side rear would make more sense unless you plan on relocating the charge port for every different market. For right-hand drive, you put it on the right side, and then for left-hand drive, you put it on the left. You know, it'd be a big mess to try to put the charge port location based on curbside charging, which I just personally don't agree with. I've heard there's rumors that Tesla's going to replace every cable, but I keep trying to remind people this. Chargers do not have the same layout. Like every single supercharger puts the charge stalls in different locations. Even the V4 superchargers with their longer cables, I've been to one where it still wouldn't reach the Rivian R1 charge port properly. So you'd have to occupy 2 stalls just like you would at a V3, which kind of defeats the whole point of including a longer cable. I recorded a video of this. I'll just bring it up to remind all y'all that just because the cable is longer, that doesn't necessarily mean the cable will always reach. It depends on the location. So here we tried several times with my friend Mike's Rivian R1. So he's occupying this stall. You know, if you were a Tesla, you'd pull into this stall and the charge port would be right here, right, on the driver's side rear, so you could grab that cable and plug it in. Well, he pulls in, this cable can't reach the front. I think we got video of it. We tried to get it to reach the front. You had to twist it, and it was already at max load. So the only way for this cable really to reach the charge port and not have Rivian Mike occupy 2 stalls is for him to back out and be sticking out into traffic where there were cars going by on this side of the road all the time. So he'd be sticking out awkwardly. And again, most people who are pulling into a charge location like that are not going to think about that. They're not going to care if they're occupying 2 stalls. They're just going to pull in and grab whichever cable is closest. So what he probably is going to, what most Rivian customers are going to end up doing at this particular location is they back into the stall. So he'll back in here and then grab this cable, plug it into the charge port over here. But now he's occupying the stall for this charger, which means if a Tesla pulls in next to him, they're going to have to grab that cable and try to stretch it all the way to the driver's side. And we tried to space it out, by the way, it couldn't reach. So with a location like that, even though the cables are longer, because they put the stalls in a weird way, doesn't really solve the problem. You still have to have a Rivian probably occupying 2 stalls. R2 front right. RJ said in an interview why they don't want to put it on the front of the R2. And it's had to do with the high voltage battery and high voltage wiring, which has to stretch a lot further to reach the front of the vehicle. So it's cheaper, more cost effective to put it on the back. Also, another reason, if you're doing a lineup of vehicles, why it doesn't make a lot of sense to put the charge port on the front. You can get away with it on a vehicle like an R1 or even an R2 because they're big. So they have big fronts. And when you have a big front, you can put the charge port. Where's B-roll? I could pull up for this. Oh, yeah, I have a B-roll folder for Rivian here. So how do I explain this? On a vehicle like a Rivian, you have a big hood, right? This big space where the grill would normally go. You can put a charge port up here, and it'll reach to an average charge cable pretty easily. But the problem is if one day you want to make a smaller vehicle or a much more aerodynamic vehicle, such as a Model 3 or a Model Y, you know, some of the most popular EVs in the world are just cars in the road now, not even just EVs. Trying to fit a charge port on the front of a low-sloped vehicle is going to be really awkward, and it's not going to be embedded very well. It's already a very aerodynamic, sensitive part of the vehicle, so you don't want to put a lot of charge ports. And it's low to the ground, so you don't want... So it makes a lot of sense to me to put it on the back because the back of the vehicle is more likely to be higher off the ground. That's how Aptera is able to achieve such a great coefficient of drag because their charge port's right on the back. NACS isn't big, but the cable is not very long. So you'd have to stretch it all the way to the ground with lower vehicles. So I think we should just standardize charge port location to keep things much simpler. Charging infrastructure would be far cheaper if we knew that cables didn't have to be varying in length. So we could deploy them much faster. So I understand why Tesla put it in the back. And especially if you're parking in a garage. Putting it on the passenger side rear is like as far away as you could possibly put it from the driver, and that's how most people are going to be charging it from home. So to know that every time you park your car, you got to open the door, get out, get to the furthest back end, grab the cable, plug it in, and then walk out the other way or step over the cable, opposed to backing into your garage, get out, grab the cable, plug in, and then you're free to go. And that's what most DC fast charging infrastructure is already optimized for. So I would just say leave it. And yeah, curbside chargers will have longer cables. But again, I don't think most people are going to be curbside charging. I think that's going to be the least common form of charging. Most people will charge at home or be DC fast charging at a V3, V4 kind of location, in which makes the most practical sense to back in because you can prefabricate the chargers and line them up instead of... It'd be nice if we could build all the chargers like gas pumps, but it's just not economical to occupy that much square footage in a parking lot. It's much cheaper to just push them off to the side. That's why so many superchargers are built like that. It's kind of just answered your question, Taker610, who super chatted. Charging needs to be set up like gas stations. You can fit about 6 charging stalls if you laid them out in a gas station location. In that same amount of space, you could fit like 30 charging stalls if you do them the way they're doing them now. They think about these things. They plan these things. Financially speaking, it's far more practical to just put them off to the side of a parking lot. You can put them all in a line. You can charge far more EVs at once. I get there's some pull-through advantages to the gas station layout, but it's definitely not economical, so I understand why they don't. Most vehicles on the road are not towing, so it makes sense to optimize for the sedans and the crossovers of the world that occupy a lot of the streets, and then even those can charge trucks if they need to, if they're not towing, and then you build a few pull-through stations for people who are towing. They're just, because it's the last piece of the personally owned vehicle puzzle, that's not being prioritized. But yeah, I think personally my guess is RJ will change his mind. I think they'll relocate the charge port to the driver's side rear because Rivian is good at listening. For a long time I kept begging them to switch to NACS and they wouldn't do it, and I was like, why the heck is Rivian not switching to NACS? Come on guys, it's out, it's public, Ford has announced it, GM has announced it, why haven't you? Eventually they came around to it. It was a good idea. And I think they'll eventually come to the same conclusion that driver's side rear is the best port location. But I do recall RJ saying in his interview with Electric why they don't want to put it on the front. Also, I believe it helps you aerodynamically, especially to not have a big flap or a slits, those little slits for the charge port on the front. It's a good call. You also asked, do you think Tesla will roll out Autopilot to the Cybertruck first and then eventually full self-driving? Ugh, your guess is as good as mine. I think it'll probably all come at first, all come at once. It's mainly just, it's going to take a while, though, because they're going to have to figure out how to update full self-driving to accommodate for one, the larger size of the Cybertruck, and also the dynamic steering ratios, which probably throws everything off. But whenever they figure that out, they could probably give it Autopilot and full self-driving at the same time. I don't think it'll be one and then the other, but I could be wrong. That's just my guess. Jackson Smith trying to give me the curveballs here. From purely the product itself, what do I think the Aptera's biggest weakness is? How do you see them fixing said issue? You just want me to say something bad because I'm always so positive on Aptera, don't you? I mean, it's pretty obvious, in my opinion. I don't think this is a shocker to anyone, but I think the biggest weakness is that it's a two-seater. That's not really shocking anyone, but like, yeah, when you make a vehicle that can only sit two people, that kind of limits the addressable market for it. But I will admit, Aptera has plans. I won't spoil them all for you. I'll let Aptera take the thunder for that one. But Aptera has plans to address those segments of the market. I think they've said that publicly. Like they intend on doing more vehicles in the future. They're just very focused on the three-wheeler because they're an efficiency-first company and they can get the auto cycle to market a lot faster and a lot cheaper than they could if they wanted to do a four-wheeled, five-seater. You're right. I am a big simp for Aptera. That's absolutely true. But I think they deserve it because they're incredibly underrated. So I'm trying to compensate for the lack of hype that I think they deserve. And I am shocked that there's not more companies trying to do what they're trying to do. I'm shocked that there's not a bigger emphasis towards more efficient vehicles, and that I'm shocked they're the only company that's really trying to make solar EVs viable. I feel like this should be a whole segment of EVs. I don't think it should just be Aptera making solar mobility. I feel like there should be more than one company trying to make ultra efficient vehicles for people who mainly just need a vehicle to get them around town. And even then, Aptera's got a ton of range and a ton of cargo capacity, so it's not even like a grocery getter. It's like, no, that's actually kind of the cannonball record setter, and it's kind of the perfect road trip machine with all its range and such an addressable market by getting like 30 to 40 miles of range per day. So really, the only thing preventing me from selling my Model 3 to buy an Aptera would be the number of seats. That's the only reason I would keep the Model 3. Full self-driving's definitely not been a great motivator to hang on to my Tesla. If I had an Aptera vehicle with the high range and the solar charging that was capable of sitting even 4 people, I don't really need the 5. It's pretty rare that I need to move around 5 people. But if I could get an Aptera that sat 4, I probably wouldn't own a Tesla anymore. I wouldn't need one at that point. Right now, the only reason I would hold on to my Model 3 and the Aptera is the extra seats. Aptera has a ton of cargo capacity. I did a big interview with the CEO on my trip to Carlsbad. I actually got to meet both CEOs on the last trip. Little fun factoids I haven't seen people talk about, so here's your exclusive scoop during the Talos of EV live stream. In case you were wondering, what do the two CEOs drive? Chris Anthony drives a blue Model Y, and Steve Fambro drives an Ioniq 6, which is kind of cool. Also kind of not surprising. They're big aero guys. Ioniq 6 is like the most aerodynamic vehicle, most efficient vehicle you can buy right now. But yeah, it makes sense. They're kind of big Tesla fans, and they like knack. So I'm sure they want to be driving Apteras. I know Steve Fambro was driving around Gamma for a while, but Gamma has been shipped out, so I didn't get to drive it again on the last trip, but it's going out to Abu Dhabi for some big investor meetings and stuff, and I think it'll do pretty well. But yeah, I love Aptera as a brand, and pretty much the only drawback of the three-wheel design is that it's a two-seater. But in the interview that I'll publish hopefully tomorrow, I'm waiting to hear back. It was a long interview, and we covered a lot of stuff, so Aptera's head of marketing, Chris McCammon, is watching the video. It's actually on this channel unlisted right now, but he's watching over it to make sure I didn't reveal anything that I wasn't supposed to. So Chris Anthony knows a lot about the whole state of the company. He's just like this endless stream of information. So when I'm asking him questions, he will just tell me what the answers are. And because Chris McCammon, the head of marketing, wasn't there, it's very real chance that he might have let some things slip or announced some things that he wasn't supposed to. So I don't want to accidentally announce or reveal anything that I wasn't supposed to. So I'm just letting the head of marketing watch over the video and let me take out a few little things or little details here and there. And once he gives me the all clear to publish, I'll hit publish. But the video's basically done. But yeah, the Aptera storage space is not really the issue, and the range isn't really the issue, because even the launch edition gets more range than most EVs at like 400 miles and 32 cubic feet of storage in the back. I also love how easy it is to access. You can access anything in the trunk from the front seat, which we experienced ourselves on our road trip sometimes. Like, my wife would want to get something out of her backpack, which we put in the trunk, and it's like, oh, yeah, I got to get out of the car and go to the back and open the trunk to access it. Whereas in the Aptera, I could just reach around and grab it. Everything would be right there. Storage space and cabin are all right next to each other. Aptera cutting out the charging time I set aside in my week would be greatly appreciated. Oh, yeah, totally. I think by much of the public, it would be super appreciated if the car could charge itself. But yeah, I couldn't be more excited for a brand. There's no company on earth that I think is working on something more innovative or disruptive, in my opinion. But I don't think there's a lot of demand in America for small cars. Well, that's good that Aptera is not that small. It's funny that within the same video, I have people tell me Apteras are too small and also too big at the same time, because it's 88 inches wide. It's about as wide as a Cybertruck, probably a little bit more wide than a Cybertruck. So really the only downside is the number of seats, but I asked Chris Anthony about that in the interview, and spoiler alert, basically they want to do a jump seat option down the road. It won't be on the launch edition, of course, but they have plans. He didn't show me a design of it, but they want to have kind of a jerry-rigged three-seater option for the three-wheeler. And I suggested doing a bench seat, but there's some structural issues with that. I don't know, because I'm not an engineer, how difficult it would be, but I suggested to the CEO straight up that I think it'd be cool if you could fold up the center console to be a middle seat. Not that it's the safest thing in the world or that it would be the most spacious, but I think a lot of people aren't looking for a vehicle to move around three people constantly, but it's nice to have an extra seat just for the occasional, in a pinch, just going to drop off my friend or just going to drop off a family member real quick. Let me just fold up the center console. We're going to squeeze in the car together. But sitting inside the Aptera, it's quite spacious. And I think if there was a way for them to redesign the underbody a little bit, you could probably squeeze a third person in there. But there's a pretty big piece that helps connect a lot of the frontal components to the rear components. He explains it a lot better than I can. So stay tuned for that interview. It's a very in-depth interview. I basically, anytime you guys asked a question about Aptera that I hadn't gotten an answer on, I would, obviously a lot of people ask the same question over and over again. Is it safe? Can it really go that far? How's it going to do that? I can answer those kinds of questions that Aptera has already publicly addressed. But anytime someone would ask a question about Aptera that I didn't know the answer to, I had a list on my phone and I would write it down. And on my last trip to Aptera, I basically went through every single question that I've collected over the past 5-6 months, and they had an answer for pretty much every single question. There was never a no comment or we can't talk about that. Pretty much everything they had a pretty decent answer for. And usually, like all things with Aptera, you ask one question or you have one concern, and then they tell you how they're addressing that and how they've already thought about that, and also the next 5 things to consider about that very topic. They feel very far ahead of anything we've thought of because they've been working on this car for a very, very long time and put a lot more time and energy and thought into it than we have. So that's my one downside is I wish it could be designed in a way to have 3 seats. I think 3 seats, if it was like a bench seat, I might consider getting rid of my Model 3. It'd be a little tight, but I think I could get away with a 3-seater. 2-seater is just a little bit too limited for me to get rid of a sedan. It'd be nice to just have the one Aptera. But like I said, Aptera has plans for future models with more seats and more capacity and stuff. Jump seat / bench seat would likely look like McLaren F1 seating, but inverse. McLaren F1. Yeah, it's not going to be a spacious 3-seater. I know that much. But they're thinking about it. They're working on it. And very exciting stuff in their future that I can't talk about yet, but very cool stuff they've got going on there. So that's the closest thing I could say is a negative is it doesn't have a bench seat. Everybody liked that comment. They're like, Drew, say more bad things about Aptera. Sunny Patel asks, why do I think reliable phone keys are so rare? I have heard of reliability issues with the Apple Car Key wallet feature, and even Rivian, who seemingly had a good thing going on, sent MKBHD a message that R1T phone key wouldn't work until a server update a few hours in duration. I see Tesla has only been improving theirs with Ryzen chips and ultra-wideband support for iPhones. Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't really understand. I think it all comes back to a point that I've been bringing up on the tech channel and now the EV channel as well. Software is everything. Software is how you stick the landing. You have to get software right. And I think a lot of companies and a lot of brands, it's probably common in automotive because a lot of automotive companies are not used to having to do much work in terms of software. They're used to just, it's a car, the doors, they open and close, and then there's buttons to control everything, and you just go. And now a lot of these car companies are having to pivot and become really big software-focused companies, which we talk about in the Aptera interviews. Sorry, I can't stop talking about it. But it's just made me so excited to hear Chris Anthony said, like, we're very much becoming more of a software company now. And I was like, yes! Hopefully that video will be up tomorrow. It'll depend on how long it takes for Aptera to approve everything that's in it. We covered a lot of new material, I think. I watch a lot of Aptera videos, and there was a lot of new information in this one. So I'm not sure if I'm allowed to disclose all of it. So I'm trying not to get everybody's hopes too high because Chris would just like say something and I'd be like, oh, really? Can we say that? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then I'm waiting to hear back from head of Aptera's marketing chief before I say, well, it's okay for me to publish everything, right? Because it's not Chris Anthony's job to make sure everything he says or shows is allowed to be shown. It's Chris McCannon's job, and I'm letting him do his job. I want to be respectful, and I don't want anybody to feel like I went behind their backs and leaked something early or announced something prematurely. So anyway, I think that software is a lot harder to get right than people realize. It's a lot of work, and it's a very talented. It requires a lot of talent and skill, and a lot of companies just probably don't put much attention into it because they don't think it's that big a deal. Oh, well, our software team can handle that, and they don't put much time into hiring either that many talented software engineers or just enough software engineers, and they overwork a very small team, and that small team can only do so many things at once, and they didn't put much time or work into the software, and that, I guess, is the problem with key fobs. I don't know. I'm not a software engineer myself, so I'm not exactly sure if that's the real problem, but it feels like there's an underappreciation for software globally in all fields, not just cars, but especially with an EV that's very dependent on software. It's like, yeah, you definitely want to get that right. Fisker, excuse me. Yeah, you want to get that right because it can literally kill the product and maybe on a grander scale the company. Like if you can have pretty good hardware, and if you don't nail the software, the whole product's kind of worthless. Odd Vice commented the next question. How come Apple Watch does not work as a key like a phone does? It can, just again comes back to software. I believe there are third-party applications that let you use your Apple Watch as a key for your Tesla. They cost money though, usually, so I'm not interested in adding one. But yeah, I don't think there's anything hardware-wise preventing it. It's just Tesla would have to add it if you wanted it to be like a free included feature. They would have to come up with like a Tesla app for the Apple Watch, which I believe someone asked about it, and Elon said, yeah, they would do it, but I don't know if they actually are going to do it, or Elon was just talking out his butt because he does that a lot. So Whit Doer says, you have converted me into getting an Aptera. Thank you. Appreciate it. The stats app for Tesla does this. It's great. There you go. There's your answer. Seating in a McLaren F1 is staggered with driver in the middle and more forward than the flanking passengers, and the Aptera would be middle. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I got you. So yeah, you'd have the two seats in the front, one in the back. I don't honestly know how they're going to do it. I won't show you footage from the interview, but there is footage Aptera has posted that kind of shows what I'm talking about. Let me pull that up here. This is the body and carbon video. Where is it? So here kind of shows us a good look at the interior. Here's what's kind of preventing the middle seat idea is you have this big column here. And Chris Anthony explained it to me pretty well. This is by design. It doesn't swoop up for no reason. There's a lot of rigidity and suspension components that go up like that. But it definitely eats into like what could potentially be, I guess, a third seat. I'm not sure if there's a better angle. That's pretty much the best angle we have of it. We talk more about it because we're like sitting inside it during the interview. So we're like touching it and pointing at it and stuff. But he explains it pretty well why it can't exactly be done on this current design. But he did say that I think for weight reasons, they'll probably have a third seat option with the standard range Aptera because you'll have a bit more payload capacity to work with because you're taking out like half the battery modules. And honestly, hearing him say that kind of makes me want that trim instead of the 1,000 mile range. I don't know. I love the idea of being able to go 1,000 miles on a charge. We actually talked about this a little bit. I don't think we talked about this on camera. So here's another little exclusive Aptera scoop for you guys. I told him, like, the accelerator program was cool and all, but how much do I have to invest in Aptera to be the first guy with the 1,000 mile range? Like, I think it'd be really cool to say, like, I took delivery of the first 1,000 mile Aptera, and of course I would do a huge road trip like the day I got it so we could document it, and then I was like, and then you guys can say that the range of that variant has been confirmed by a third party because I'm not paid by Aptera. They don't sponsor me or anything. And I asked the CEO that directly, and he said, I mean, we could also just like give you one to test for the video, and then you just bring it back when you're done with the video. And I was like, oh, well, that works too. So I don't know if that verbal comment he made that he's probably already forgot about is like legally standing, or if, Chris McCammon would be up for it or something. But it's possible that, in case you weren't aware, the order of range options that Aptera is going to make, they're starting with the launch edition, which is the 400-mile range. After that, they're going to do the standard range, which is like 250 miles, maybe less if they take out more modules. So 400, then 250. After the 250, then they will do the 600-mile range. Then lastly, they'll do the 1,000-mile range, which all of that to say, my point is, Aptera will be in production and deliveries will have begun for quite some time by the time they get around to the 1,000-mile range variant. So it's quite possible that they could build maybe like a non-consumer delivered one, but like a prototype Aptera that still has the production grade software, and they're already in production, so they're ready to service them or whatever, but they just build in the 106 kilowatt hour pack that they talked about, and say, okay, here's the first ever 1,000-mile range Aptera. Let's let Drew test it out for a video. I drive it around, do a crazy road trip video with it, and then give it back. And then they can continue to test it and validate it. And that's not actually the first consumer delivered one, but it might set some kind of electric vehicle road trip record or something like that. So when he told me that, I was like, okay, well, maybe I don't need to buy the 1,000-mile range one if he's going to let me test it. Maybe I'd go with a more efficient one, or a one with more seating if it was going to be one that I'm going to keep and hold on to. But I don't know. This is all future talk. Their main focus right now is all on the launch edition. So all that stuff is up in the air and potentially able to be reworked and changed and stuff. Tommy asks, can you off-road in an Aptera? You can, yeah. There's actually a off-road package they plan on offering. Mike in the Woods is in the chat. I don't know. He just dropped in briefly, so he's probably not here anymore. But sorry about the bit rate. I know it's all pixelated. I'll wait for it to recover. Come on, T-Mobile. You were doing so great. Now you're all acting up. Usually it just takes a couple of seconds and then it comes back. At least you can hear me, right? That's all that matters. Let me close this back tab. Jeez, it doesn't want to fix itself. Come on. All right, slowly making its way back up. Slowly. All right. T-Mobile just sometimes gets crazy. Anyway, Mike in the Woods did a great video on off-roading with the Aptera and brought up that there's actually some advantages to having a three-wheel design, because with the three-wheel design, all three wheels are always going to be touching the ground. Plus, it's all-wheel drive with 3 motors, so there's a motor in each wheel. Individual torque vectoring is easier. With a four-wheeled car going off-road, you often have the problem of one of the tires getting off the ground, and that one doesn't apply as much grip. The only concern with like the launch edition in off-roading is the wheel pants, but Aptera has said there will be ways to take those off. So if you're off-roading, you probably don't care as much about your aerodynamics, because usually when you're off-roading, you're not going as fast, and you're probably not going to be as efficient off-road anyway. So they've already showcased in some of the beta testing videos that Aptera can be driven around without the wheel pants. No pants on! You just take those wheel covers off, and now you just have these big exposed wheels on the front for driving stuff around. Like Mike said, that's the problem, Chris. I won't return it. Let me just try it out for the video. Don't give it back. Yeah. You put the best case forward for the 250-mile version. I've reserved that one. I think it will have to be the lightest weight, because it'll have the smallest battery pack. It will also probably be the cheapest Aptera. So yeah, PM's asking me, 250 in third seat. If it releases before the 1,000, do you buy it? I think it will probably release. Well, I guess there's a chance they release the 250-mile without the third seat first. I don't know. I guess it'll depend on... I do have a lot of Aptera referral points, thanks to you guys, and I want to make sure that those points aren't wasted. So I do probably want to wait until a few Aptera points actually go through and I have officially confirmed discount on the car. So that will dictate when I get it. But I'm honestly curious. I wonder if I could figure out how many of my Aptera points are on the accelerator program. That'd be kind of interesting if there was like 26 or 30 accelerators that also used my referral code. Then that means before the accelerator program ends, I would have enough Aptera credits to get the car. I've asked about that, Plump, about doing one-wheel drive. I think it has something to do with wait, no, what was it? I swear I remember asking about that. It's more stable, I guess, to have the motors going to the front wheels than just the back. It helps with stability. It helps with smoother acceleration. But yeah, I thought about that. For some reason, I'm blanking on what they told me, but I remember specifically asking. It wasn't in the interview that's dropping tomorrow, but at one point, I think it was Jason Hill, I asked, why can't you just do one motor in the back? I don't think it would actually save them that much money, is what I heard. It's not that much cheaper. They keep saying Aptera will be open source. Is the code available in a Git repo currently? I'm not sure if the software is necessarily open source, but I know that they want to make the parts and components, most of the hardware is going to be all serviceable and modular and that kind of stuff. It'd be interesting for Aptera to get into the ultralight solar trailer business for EV trucks. We didn't talk about that, but the EV, who was it? Steve Fambro, the co-CEO, was meeting with someone who did EV towing. Let me find that tweet. I'm curious. There it is. Yeah, he's on Twitter, by the way. He posts. I know not a lot of people follow him, but this is Steve Fambro. Yeah, Polydrops. Polydrops, I think, is a startup company. So that's Steve Fambro and that's Chris Anthony outside. And he says, nice to meet you, Polydrops. And Polydrops is making sustainable mobile room towed by any vehicle, including EVs. So they seem to be focused on doing, more aerodynamic, efficient towing. So maybe, I don't know. I didn't ask much about towing because I figured, a three-wheeled autocycle isn't going to be doing a lot of towing, but there might be some plans in the works. There might have something. I need to get that Vanessa Carlton song for commercial when they advertise. Because I drive 1,000 miles if I could just... Yeah, I want to play that song for my video, yeah. 2 torque points better than 1 if loss of traction of power needed to escape, but wheel. Yeah, that's a good point. There was definitely a reason. I'm blanking on what it was, but they had a reason for not doing rear-wheel drive. Thanks for keeping our expectations tempered for EV and tech. It's helped a lot, but also keep up the Aptera hype train and praise. It's so exciting. Yeah, I hope I don't come across as too overly blind with Aptera. It might be because they've told me some things that I'm not supposed to share that make me more excited, but I don't know. As an efficiency guy, it's just the company that feels like they're doing everything right. They're just doing everything I would do if I was making an EV company. I don't think I could ever make my own EV startup because I would just be a carbon cut copy of Aptera. I would just join Aptera. I'd be like, what do you guys need? But yeah, I hope I don't seem too blind and too sheepish towards them. I probably am. But I just have a hard time not getting excited for a company that's so transparent and so honest and is trying to rethink form factors a bit more. Let's actually just let the car charge itself via sunlight. For the record, I've never told anyone to invest in Aptera, other than billionaires. So if you're a billionaire, I guess you can get mad at me. But I don't think most of you are billionaires, believe it or not. I'm sorry. Apparently there are plans for a 4-wheeled Aptera. Yeah, I think they've publicly stated that for a while now. They do have some designs. I'll say that much. They do have some ideas in mind, and they're not just saying eventually we'll do a 4-wheeler. They've made some motions in that direction that are exciting. Inflation could get so bad Aptera goes from 3 to 4. No, I think the PSI for those tires is pretty low, actually, so we should be good. Yeah, solar trailer would be interesting. I would love to play the 1,000 Miles song. Cybertruck FSD has nothing to do with variable ratio. The variable ratio is just a mapping between controller position and rack position. The FSD computer will just access the rack position directly. Well, if it's not a big deal, why is it taking so long? That was just my theory as to why they can't just put existing FSD on the Cybertruck, but if it's true that it's not that hard or it's really easy to switch the controller position over, then why doesn't it have basic autopilot? Like, come on. It's that people spent $120,000 on a vehicle that doesn't have lane keep. That seems pretty embarrassing. They say money can't buy happiness, but being a billionaire would fix so many of my problems. It'd fix your current problems, but it would cause new ones. Ask any billionaire if they're much, much happier. Usually people treat you very differently. People look at you differently when they know how much money you have, and then people ask for things, and if you don't give it to them, then... Or if you do give it to them, then they come back asking for more, and then if you don't give it to them, then they treat you differently. Watch documentaries on what happens when people win the lottery. That's not even $1 billion. But most of the time when people win the lottery, it ruins their life. No joke. That's not an exaggeration. Like, vast majority of the time, like 90+% of the time, if someone wins the lottery, their life is ruined. Needs speed info for steering as well for Cyber FSD. Yeah, there's no shortcuts with FSD. There's never like, we'll just put it there or just add this. And it's like, nope, now you got to start all over. Now it takes way longer. My oldest son is 14 now, and I imagine I won't need to bring the whole family of 5 around at once to places much longer. Soon I won't need more than probably 3 passengers and myself as a driver. Yeah. That'd still be kind of a sedan because he'd need 4 seats. Earth travel trailers are more aerodynamic, 250 to 400 pounds. That's pretty good. I'm just always in favor of, like, if you can get by without towing, you'll be far better off. Charging will be much easier. Efficiency will be much better. If it's possible to get by without towing, I'd rather do that. Like, personally, if I wanted to do, like, van life, I probably wouldn't get a van for one. But the closest thing that would resemble van life for me would be like I would just get a Cybertruck, and I would want I've talked to Mike about this, Model Y Mike. I would want an accessory that occupies the bed space with basically a really, really nice bathroom. Because I can sleep in the cab. In fact, I would prefer to sleep in the cab because the cab is HVAC controlled. If I try to sleep in the bed of the Cybertruck, it's going to feel like I'm in a coffin. It'll get too hot. So I'd rather sit in the cab because I can run camp mode. I can recline the seats all the way back and get pretty close to flat. I've slept in my Model 3 that way. Or I could sleep in the second row with the seats folded up. It'd be a little crammed, but I could do it. So I would just sleep in the cabin, stuff all my clothes in the frunk. But if there was some accessory that kind of like the Cyberlander, but just a bathroom, I don't need a bed in there. I don't want a TV or a desk in there. Just the Cybertruck interior can be my desk. It's got the screen. It's got the big dashboard. I would do all my living stuff in there, but the back of the Cybertruck, I'd want like a really nice shower and a really nice toilet and, space and all that for black water and gray water. And you can power it all through the 110 outlets back there. And I want it to be all collapsible so that the vault cover can still close. So I retain my aerodynamic shape, very little range penalty. And then you can back into all your existing superchargers, no problem. And that's how I would van life, essentially. Did I see the all-wheel drive Cybertruck delivery has been pushed back to 2025? Yeah, I was wondering what took them so long because I was like, there's no way. It's already April. There's no way they're going to start delivering everybody's all-wheel drive Cybertruck this year. That's not happening. Excuse me. Be really excited to look for a 3rd-seat Aptera, but 4-seat would be nearly a perfect use case for me. I'm pretty sure there's no chance of you squeezing a 4-seat in that design, but they will do other designs in the future that have more seats for sure. and they still want to make them super aerodynamic, super efficient, and have solar charging. So all the things you love and enjoy about Aptera will probably scale to a larger vehicle, all in good time. It takes a while, but yeah, I don't think at this rate even the Foundation series is going to be done by summer. I think Tesla's still probably going to be delivering just Foundation series through August and September. It'll be interesting when they finally stop doing Foundation series. I wonder when that day is going to come where finally someone takes delivery of a Cybertruck who doesn't have to pay for the full self-driving and the lifetime premium connectivity and all the Foundation perks and all that stuff. Yeah, real Cybertruck, if not canceled, will be very, very delayed. I don't think it'll be ready in 2025. I'm also hoping that perovskite cells help breach the theoretical limits on solar cells, and the Aptera can sell next-gen solar cells when that happens. Yeah, it kind of sounds like solid-state batteries to me. It's like, that's really cool idea. If it happens, I'll get excited, but until it's mass-producible and scalable, I don't want to get my hopes up, because solar cell efficiency has been kind of leveling off over the past few years, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be much that will result in a huge jump. Just got back from a week of van life in a Sprinter, and I'd say bathrooms are unnecessary in your vehicle. Everywhere you go has bathrooms. It's like the book says, everybody poops. Yeah, I know, but I don't like public bathrooms much. I like to have my own. I'm kind of picky, especially showers. I would want to be able to shower regularly, and I don't like truck stop showers and stuff. I don't know. I like being able to go wherever I want to go and shower where I want to shower. Do people really want to tow with an Aptera? They do. Your efficiency is going to take a massive hit, but yeah, a lot of people do. Only thing I worry about Aptera would be rear end collision, tipping it over and can't open doors. Should be fine, very light. Well, the good news is, Jeff, it's designed in a way that if it detects a major collision, the doors are designed to unlatch anyway. So I don't think you'd really tip it over. You'd probably push it forward a lot. But this the Aptera rear has a much longer crumple zone than most vehicles, because it's only one row of seats, right? So here's a front end collision simulation. Shows everything collapsing. But you know, the occupants are sitting like here, right? So you have all of this space on the back half to absorb the blow and take the impact of a rear end collision. Whereas in a vehicle like a Model 3 or Model Y, which are still very safe, where did it go? I know I have pictures. They're still very safe, but if you're in the second row, you just have like here to here. That's your crumple zone, basically the size of your trunk. And Aptera has a very, very long trunk. So there's a lot of space to crumble inward and kind of fold as you get hit if you are rear-ended. So I don't personally think you'd flip over. I think it's actually a shockingly safe vehicle for the size. Think about how long it took for Hardware 4 cars to have enough training compute on lots of cars. Cybertruck is too new still. Yeah, but at least with Hardware 4, people still had Autopilot. They were still training the data. They still had FSD. It wasn't as capable, but they had it. Cybertruck doesn't even have that. So I feel like there must be something more complicated in regards to the Cybertruck that's causing problems. Yeah, I think that they'll do the first official crash tests with the next couple PI builds, and they'll be quite informative. But I don't know. I hope they work. I hope they document them in a way that's convincing, because I know a bunch of people are probably just going to say, oh, the Aptera looks weird, so it must be dangerous. And then it's like, okay, here's the crash test. They validated it and proved it, and it's actually incredibly safe. Still achieves a 5-star crash rating and everything. And people go, yeah, but I don't know, though. It's still, I don't think it's safe. It's like, okay, were you actually open to your mind getting changed, or are you just against the design, so you're coming up with excuses to not like the design, or coming up with reasons as to why no one else has that design, when in reality it might just be a really good design that more people should have. waiting for my 600 kilowatt, 600 mile range version. Is that what you meant? Yeah, that's gonna be sweet. I hope they get there. It's gonna be an interesting wait because I think I heard them say in a different interview that they have over 10,000 reservations just for the launch edition. So it's quite possible that their first 2 or 3 years of production, they just build the one model because they have enough demand for it. And they won't need to build other models for a while, other trims for a long while because everybody wants that 400-mile range variant. And that's just the sweet spot, I guess. More excited about my Lightship reservation than my Cybertruck reservation right now. Really? That's going to be a much more expensive purchase, but congratulations if you can afford one of those. Wow. Holy crap. But yeah, let me make sure. I think I read all the questions. I think we're all caught up, but yeah, we've got definitely more very in-depth Aptera coverage on the way. I guess one thing you can ask about, because I'm not showing anything, if anyone wants to know thoughts or has personal questions about driving the Fisker Ocean. I have driven a Fisker Ocean now, so I can tell you all about it if you're wondering anything about it. Oh, yeah, I know a question. I was scrolling back. I was curious. Someone asked me if the Fisker Ocean I drove had a 2.0 software update. And yes, it did. And no, I didn't think that it made the software amazing. It was still pretty clunky. It was still pretty buggy and still kind of weird. Still not very eloquently designed. I was not a big fan of the rotating display. But I have heard that they're selling a lot of Fisker Oceans since the price cuts, surprisingly. They weren't sure if that was going to result in a large uptick, but the guy I know that works at Fisker said that they've sold more cars with these price cuts than they ever have before. And he said that the people buying them, they know what they're getting into. Like, the people who are buying the Oceans with the new price cuts are aware that the company's probably not going to be around much longer. Like, they're up for it. They're like, okay, game on. Like, this is going to be weird. I'm going to have to service it myself. I'm not sure if I'm going to ever get a software update again. That's okay. I like the hardware enough in its current form. I like the price, so I'm just going to try to make it work as is. And that's going to be really fascinating. I wish I had that kind of money to play around with. I don't really have that kind of spare money to just, let me just drop 35 grand on this car from a dying startup and see how it goes. But I want to stay in contact with someone who owns an Ocean just to see how is this thing going to age, because I think it's going to be a really interesting chapter in the EV startup history to just know, yeah, if the company delivers the car and then goes under, what happens? Does it get bricked someday? Does it just straight up stop working? Can you still register it? Can you still charge it? Will it reach a point where Electrify America doesn't recognize it, or you can't plug it into a charger anymore? Do you have to only AC charge it? I don't know. Marngel says, I do wonder how the Aptera would handle crashes against big SUVs, though. Well, yeah, I mean, typically the bigger vehicle wins, but that doesn't mean the vehicle's necessarily unsafe. It's like, okay, does that make the Cybertruck unsafe? Because there's semi-trucks everywhere, man. I mean, anytime a semi-truck driver could be texting or fall asleep at the wheel and slam into your Hummer, then you're still dead. So you can't just fall back on the like, well, buy big vehicle because big vehicle's safer. It's like, you could get slammed by a semi-truck at any time. Those things that got way more weight, way more height, way more volume than you'll ever have. So, but you'd be surprised that, like, there's safety is not an objective scale. It's not like this car is 100% safe. This car is 80% safe. Everything with engineering, especially with safety, is all about compromise. So you could increase your size and your weight which makes you a bit safer in certain types of collisions, but it makes you more dangerous in other types of collisions. Like when you run into a stationary object, like if you crashed into a telephone pole or if you crashed into a tree or, you crash into a semi-truck because a semi-truck pulled out in front of you, having more weight and more mass, more inertia pushing you forward, that actually hurts you than a lighter, smaller vehicle could. So it's not like a perfect linear, playing field. There's certain things where bigger vehicles are more dangerous and smaller vehicles are safer, and there's other times where bigger vehicles are safer. So it just depends on the type of collision. So the goal is to design it to be safest for the most common regular types of collisions. And that's what I think the Aptera focused on, is making sure that the most common, frequent types of collisions, you're as safe as possible. There's still airbags. There's still a wider than required crumple zone, longer crumple zone than a 5-star safety rating requires, and an even bigger crumple zone on the rear. The side impact protection, the airbags. They made it as safe as they possibly could, and I think it'll be perfectly safe. Plus, at the end of the day, again, like I said, semi-truck can just slam you no matter how big your car is. And some people still bike on roads, which no airbags, no crumple zones, but people still do it, and it's more efficient and more practical. So even if the Aptera does score lower than a sedan or something, I don't think that necessarily will kill all the demand for it, because some people are willing to take on a little bit more risk or a little bit less safety if it means that they get cheaper cost of transportation in some way. Weight means stopping distance can change physics. Yeah, that's true. Weight can cause more problems. It solves some, but causes others. You hear about my Model 3 issues? 2 times in 1 week it detected wheel slippage when braking with brake pedal, causing traction control to kick in. Service center spent 3 hours trying to find out why. Yikes. Sorry to hear that, Mike. I haven't had that issue. Let's see. Tony says expected value on a Fisker Ocean as a museum piece looking maybe 10 years out. I wonder. Yeah, I don't think the Fisker Ocean's resale value will drop to zero. I don't think they'll ever quite reach zero. I mean, depending on how badly the software is over time or the servicing issues get, they could go down a lot, but there's a very big battery pack in most of those Oceans. Most of them have like 113 kilowatt hours. Even if you're just going to convert the battery pack into a vehicle, into a home battery solution, like a big power wall, that's very valuable. Like a power wall, people will pay $10,000 for 13 kilowatt hours. Here's an Ocean with 113 kilowatt hours. If someone who knows what they're doing knows how to jerry-rig that battery to turn it into a home backup solution, that's pretty valuable. That's a lot of batteries. So I can see why some people decided to buy it. Greenpad says, can you give a couple things you love and hate about your Model 3? I love the software, and I hate the software. I'm a big software guy, so Tesla, in my opinion, has like the best software in the biz. The mobile app, the in-car software, the infotainment, everything is so great. I use Tesla theater mode like all the time. I love the minimalistic interior. I like everything just being on this one display. So clean, so good, better than anybody else. But also, it could be so much better. I wish it had CarPlay. I wish it had AirPlay. I wish it had more streaming apps. I wish it had an app store. I wish I could set the direction of the car from the display. Like, just let me do that if I don't feel like using the gear stock. I wish it had auto shift out of drive. I have all the hardware you need to do that, but they don't let me do it. I have to use the old gear stock. I like the stock for blinkers. I don't love it for changing gears and directions all that much, but that's why, again, Aptera is like perfect vehicle for me. It's got the blinker stock, but you change the gears on the display. So, yeah, everything in regards to the autonomous driving with my Model 3 has been a disappointment. Like, Autopilot wasn't as great as I thought. FSD wasn't as great as I thought. So as far as the autonomous driving stuff, that was probably my biggest disappointment from day one. Is like, it always got hyped up. I was always looking forward to, I hate driving my own car. I want a car that can drive itself. Now that I have it, and I have the non-beta FSD without supervision, I'm like, this is it? After all these years, this is the best we can do? This is $12,000 software package. This thing costs $200 a month, and I just get stressed out, and everybody in the car feels uncomfortable when I use it. So now my family is just straight up asking me not to use it. It's like, okay, no, I'm not gonna pay that much. I wouldn't pay 6,000 for it, honestly. Like, I don't think I'd pay $1,000 for it right now because I kind of get annoyed whenever I turn it on. It just immediately starts doing weird things and things I don't like. And the whole point of wanting a driver assist feature is so that you don't have to drive so much, and you want to relax. You want to take away the boring, repetitive, tedious task of keeping the car on the road and watching for traffic and pedestrians, and you just want the car to take care of all that so you can relax. Well, in its current form, it doesn't help me relax. It just makes me a bit more stressed out. Now I just feel like a AI robot babysitter. And there's so many situations where it's just easier for me to drive anyway. Not that I like driving. I want the car to do all the driving. I just want it to do it well, and it just doesn't, sadly. So that was a big disappointment. But things I love about it: the efficiency, the smoothness of it. It's so planted on the ground. It's so quiet. I love, when I first got it, I loved just being able to plug it in and charging at home. Now, thanks to you guys with the referral credits, I love being able to charge for free. I did, this huge road trip, and I didn't have to pay a cent for charging. That's really cool, and I've really fallen in love with that. It's like the ability of just driving around for free is amazing. Maybe that's part of the reason I love Aptera so much. Is like, I'm a YouTuber, so I understand I can take advantage of referral programs and stuff like that. But I want everybody to be able to experience free charging, which the Aptera is trying to bring to the masses. So, like, even if you can't afford a $50,000 car, you could still buy a vehicle that's capable of charging itself and doesn't need to be plugged in and still gets good range and still has good software and is serviceable and repairable. So that's kind of, I guess, the things I like about my Model 3, the efficiency, how little energy it uses, not having to go to gas stations. I love the storage space. The frunk and the trunk can fit a lot of stuff. And it's just a very smooth ride. The new refresh Model 3 is even better, but still, every time I get behind the wheel of my Model 3 and I'm driving myself, I'm like, oh, this is so nice. It's so quiet. It's so simple. And I just love everything is just a tap away. And the navigation has not been great, though. That's one thing. Tesla Nav is just weird and confusing and takes me down these weird paths, and they want me to pay an extra $10 a month just to have satellite view and stoplight recognition and stuff. It's like, I'll just throw in that stuff. I could get that stuff for free on my phone. Apple pays for that on my $1,000 phone, but Tesla doesn't want to pay for it on my $50,000 car. So that's why CarPlay would be handy. I'm glad Aptera is going to have it. So, yeah, it's still a great vehicle. I'm still very happy with it. For the record, that's why I'm not in a big rush to get another EV, because I am very happy and very confident and perfectly content with my current car. It's a great vehicle, and they told me the LFP battery pack could last 1 million miles. I want to test that. That's legitimately my goal, pending, hopefully we don't get into any car accidents or collisions to where it gets completely totaled. But if it's possible for me to keep the car for decades and just drive it until it doesn't work anymore, I would like to do that. I think it'd be really interesting to see how it lasts over the long term. So I'm really in love with it, and there's been a few service appointments I've had to go with, but for the most part, it's been great. I'm very happy. Road trip was much, much easier thanks to that car. And honestly, it's taught me a lot about EVs. I love that it's one of the first LFP vehicles in America. And I like that it still has its ultrasonic sensors, so I can still use Summon. I have used Summon a lot in the last week, and I couldn't do that if I waited just a month. If I would have waited another month to order my car, I wouldn't have gotten the ultrasonic sensors. So, yeah, I would love to do like a 500,000 mile review or something like that. I mean, I'll do updates, of course, whenever there's a mileage significant number I reach and some new updates on the car. I'll do an updated video. So that might mean 100,000 miles or 200,000 or whatever. But I'm putting a lot of miles on it, and when I get my Aptera, I might put less miles on it, but I did get the AMD Ryzen chip. That's good too. That helps out. LFP likes to stick around. Case in point, Kyle's 10-year-old Coda that he had to unglue from the pavement still had a charge in the past. Yeah, I watched that video. It was amazing. I felt really good about LFP after that. To be fair, it's not exactly the same kind of aging because that LFP battery had close to no cycles on it. Pretty much 0 cycles on the battery. So, sure, a battery that's not used very much might have a decent shelf life, but it's probably a bit different when your car has like hundreds of cycles or thousands of cycles. I'm not in that realm yet, though. I'm a long ways away from 1,000 cycles. To give you perspective, if your range on your car is like 240 miles real world, you'd need to hit 240,000 miles on the odometer to get to 1,000 cycles. So obviously, I'm nowhere close to that, so I've got a while. I did ask Aptera about sodium ion, just for the record. You probably won't like the answer, Mike, but yeah, I saw you guys asking about using sodium ion, and Chris is aware of it, but he said that the cycle life of sodium ion with, battery packs with decent warranties are not looking good for sodium ion at this time. But you asked me to ask, so I did. I brought up sodium. If it had NACS and money wasn't an option, would you prefer a Lucid Air Gravity over a Model X? Ooh. See, you have to get very specific with these requests. They're like, how do I phrase my question to make it sound like Drew wants a Lucid Gravity? Yeah, I don't know. I've not driven a Lucid Gravity. I haven't seen one even in the wild. So I might have to drive it around and try it before I come up to a definitive, like, yes, this is better than Model X. I have driven the Model X. Really like it. Like the windshield, like the storage capability. I like the Falcon Wing doors. The Gravity might be more efficient though, and it could have NACS, but it still may not have a great charge port location. So, yeah, I don't know. It'd still not be like a definite yes. There's a lot of strings attached. It's like if NACS was in the right charge port location and it would get good charging speeds at all superchargers, maybe that's what I'm looking for, but I don't know. I've never checked one out. Let's see. LFP is what I want, but I'd want to learn more about LMFP. Yeah, that's promising new chemistries on the horizon. Yeah. Did I hear about the electric Cadillac Escalade? I think it's rather dumb. Yeah, I have a hard time getting excited for electric SUVs, just because I think the SUV segment is overrated and there's too many of them, and I'm more interested in like smaller, more aerodynamic vehicles and that kind of thing. I'm curious to see how the life cycle of an NMC battery will compare to LFP. Well, at least in all the lab tests, LFP is supposed to last much longer, usually about twice as long. So we've seen people with NMC batteries get 200,000 miles on them and still be good. So I'm very curious what my LFP pack will be like after that long. We'll see. Other than Tesla and Aptera, who's your bang, marry, kill of EVs? Borrow, keep, delete from existence. Let's focus on those terms. Borrow, keep, delete from existence. Interesting. In terms of EVs, I would love to borrow a Cybertruck. There's so much about the Cybertruck I like. I love the steer-by-wire. I love the interior. I like that you can stand on the tonneau cover. I love the attention it draws for a while. I just like that it's an art form in itself. Like the design is just so iconic. Do I need to own one? No. I would heavily consider just like I'll borrow a Cybertruck when I need to move something, or I don't know, want to go off-roading somewhere or something like that. I would borrow one for the day. I don't think I would ever need to own one like for an extended period of time. But yeah, I would probably borrow a Cybertruck, and then what EV would I keep? Obviously an Aptera. That's the one that I want the most, and I'm an efficiency nut. I love trying to get my car to use as little energy as possible, and what that sound is. That's weird. I like the idea of solar charging and getting meaningful range out of it. So, of course, like a 1,000-mile range Aptera would be my keep. And then Delete from existence? Oh, man. Who do I choose? There's so many. Probably the electric Dodge Charger, the Daytona, the one that with the speakers that revs up. Oh my God, there's been so many. There's a lot of Charger owners in my area that love revving them up and trying to see how loud they can make their car, especially in the middle of the night when people are trying to sleep, and it just makes me so angry. It's like, I can't wait for that to be banned. Please ban that. Like, noise pollution is a thing. Like, we should crack down on that and make vehicles really, really hard to hit those decibel ratings. And Dodge is out there trying to intentionally make their EV hit those decibel ratings. It's super heavy. It's like over 6,000 pounds. Doesn't have a lot of seating. It's not efficient somehow, despite being small. It's like probably going to be expensive. It's just wasteful, inefficient. I don't even think muscle car guys would buy it because it's still an EV at the end of the day. So it's like, why are you here? I don't think you're appeasing anybody's wishes. Like, I don't think anyone really wants that. Other than Tesla and Aptera, and your answers were Tesla and Aptera. Oh, I see. I forgot the first part of the question. But okay, a different borrow. Probably a Rivian, yeah. Rivian R1Ts are great. So if I needed a truck, again, I very rarely in my life have ever needed to borrow a truck for any reason. Pretty much just when I move, I borrow someone's truck. And I've moved, like 3 times in my life. So if I need to borrow a truck, yeah, maybe the Silverado EV, because that's a bit bigger and it has a mid-gate. The Silverado EV is honestly quite impressive. I'm not in love with the interior or the software, but at least on paper, it's got 350 kilowatt fast charging, over 200 kilowatt hour battery pack, pretty big bed, a mid-gate, pretty big frunk, just the right charge port location, driver side rear. So much about the Silverado EV is great. Would I buy one? No. But would I borrow one? Yeah, I'd be kind of curious. As far as software and interior, I would probably prefer a Rivian, though. I really like Rivians. You get both sides mad with that charger. Everyone gets mad. Yeah, nothing beats the Supercharger network. That's for sure. But he said not counting Tesla and Aptera. So what's the one I would keep? I really like good software in an EV, so probably a Rivian something. If the R3 is an option, I love the R3. I would totally own one if it was efficient and reasonably priced. And I don't know, I like small, practical vehicles, and the R3 seems pretty compact. I hope they make it. Honestly, I wish they would make the R3 before the R2. I think the R2 is a little too close to the R1S because it's a 5-seater, and I think that they should just go straight to the R3 because all the polls, at least that I've seen, more people are excited for the R3 than the R2. So it's like, yeah, you really had that one more thing moment, but then now you're telling everybody that one more thing is going to come even later. They probably revealed it too soon. It made for a great event, but it probably ate into R2 sales because now I've seen a lot of people say, like, yeah, R2 is cool, but I'd rather wait for the R3. So they might have unintentionally Osborned themselves too early. Not the R3X. I like the R3X styling, but I know it's got a big emphasis on performance, and I'm not a performance guy. I don't like to go fast. I'm not the kind of guy that slams on the accelerator. So I'm all about efficiency, and the regular R3 I think would be much more efficient. I would take the single motor standard range. Like, I don't know. There's so many older cars I've seen on my road trip that kind of remind me of the R3 now. I'm like, it really is a very nostalgic classic design that kind of helps you blend in. Like, nobody's gonna care that you have an R3. No one's gonna be like, hey, what kind of car is that? Maybe if the headlights grab a bunch of attention, but for the most part it kind of looks like an old car from the 80s or 90s, and I love that about it. So if I had to keep a vehicle and personally own it and drive it on the daily, and it couldn't be a Tesla and it couldn't be an Aptera, you guys have these very specific questions. And then, yeah, I would get rid of the Daytona. Tech by Steph says, I'd love a Dodge Charger Daytona SRT Banshee. It looks sick and black in that dark wine color. I want one so bad. That's my point. A lot of people praise it online, but I've not met a single person that said they would actually buy it. They're just like, oh, that's cool. Are you gonna buy it? No. Well, no, that's impractical or that's expensive. I'm like, that's my point. That's why it's stupid. I was hoping Rivian would avoid unveiling products that are years out. Well, they did unveil the R1 pretty early. I think they unveiled the R1T and the R1S back in 2018. Then they didn't deliver it until 2020, I think. It was like 2 or 3 years or something like that. I feel the reaction to the Cybertruck attention in this R3 answer. Yeah, driving around town and seeing how much attention the Cybertruck attracts. It's like, yeah, sometimes sleeper cars are kind of nice. That's a perk of my Model 3. No one cares that you have a Model 3. No one's like, hey, what kind of car is that? No one's like, it's a car. It looks like every sedan on the road. It's a little more futuristic, but there's so many of them that nobody thinks anything of it. I can't think of a reason to borrow a vehicle other than for moving or a road trip. My little Bolt doesn't rate well for road trips. Oh, sure. Yeah, the fast charging's a little slow. But yeah, I rarely need to borrow a vehicle. But if I did, it'd probably be a truck. Honestly, I think a lot of people buy trucks that could probably get by with borrowing them or renting them on occasion. Like, a lot of people are like, I need to own a truck. And then they use it for trucks things like twice a year. And it's like, okay, I mean, that's your call, but if you just like rented the truck you wanted twice a year, that'd probably be a lot cheaper than owning it yourself. So I love the Cybertruck. It's so eye-catching, and I love pointing them out on the road. I understand the attention; it makes sense, but I love the shape and I love the bed size and the frunk and the interior. It's definitely my favorite pickup truck by far. But I just can't justify owning one. It would just sit there a lot of the time, and I would just drive me and my wife around in it and be like, okay, we're using it like we use our sedan. How long until no one cares you drive a Cybertruck? Yeah, I hope not that long, but it honestly feels like it might keep going. I watched your Cybertruck first drive video today. Cybertruck is wifey approved. When are you taking delivery? Yeah, if it wasn't clear, she was being a little sarcastic, but she said we just have to sell our house. Hopefully that was the wink hint of, yeah, I don't think we're going to buy one of these. I don't know. My lifestyle, I think, would have to change in some way to get to the point where we really need one. Like, yeah, I'm doing truck stuff enough to warrant buying one. I'd like to see how cheap they get on Turo. I'm hoping Tesla like floods the market with Cybertrucks so that you could like rent one for the day or for a weekend and it wouldn't cost that much. And then maybe if we do a camping trip or need to move something, I could just borrow one or rent one for the day. I'd love to know someone with a Cybertruck. That's always, well, I guess I know Gregor Truck, but he lives far away. I want to know someone close by who owns one so that I could like hit him up and just be like, hey, by the way, how's this update, or how are you liking it, or just I'd like to be in close proximity to a Cybertruck on the regular, because that's more fun. You don't have to pay for it and you can still enjoy it, that kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know what to do if you don't have FSD, man. I'm sorry, you just kind of have to wait, I guess. Thinking about it more, I would like to borrow the Lightyear Zero just to see if it had potential as a solar battery EV if it were so expensive. I guess that'd be kind of interesting as an efficiency guy, but I don't understand why it's so pricey. Why did they... Efficiency and luxury don't always go that well together. That's the Lucid problem. It's like, wow, this uses much less energy per mile, so you save money on charging, but it costs $100,000. It's like, okay, what's the point? If I spend $100,000 on a car, I'm not going to care how efficient it is because I just spent $100,000. People who care about efficiency are more likely to be the kind of people that want a more affordable, practical vehicle. Those go hand in hand. So that's why the Aptera makes sense as like, let's make a super efficient, affordable vehicle. You already enjoy car camping. We'll just take some prodding to get you into a full EV overlander. Bam, excuse to get Cybertruck. Yeah, I think Mike in the Woods is right. The best chance of me wanting to buy and own a Cybertruck would be if me and my wife got really into like, overlanding, or what do they call it, van lifing, that kind of thing. Just living on the road and doing big road trips where you're sleeping in the car for weeks at a time and that kind of stuff. But Tesla might have a van at that point, and that might eat into a lot of the advantages. Let's see. Europe, we won't get FSD for years, so be happy you can get it at all. New question then. When I do get the update for free FSD, will I get a full month or will it end on May 5th? You should get the full month. For me, it started on the day you installed it, I believe. So mine expires on April 30th. I am definitely not renewing. Oh my God. What a joke of a software feature. I tried to engage Elon on X for 4 months while having a blue check mark without success. Obviously, there's some kind of filter in play. Well, don't act like it's just, Elon's against you or something. He's got, like 150 million followers. It's entirely possible you could reply to every tweet, ask Elon the exact same question 1,000 times in a row, and he may never literally see your reply. Even if it's a good question, and if he did see a reply, he would respond. There's a chance, because of how many bots and replies he gets, that he would just literally never see your response. Check out Grounded RVs. They're doing an EV camper van based on the Bright Drop van platform. 250-mile range, 1 kilowatt solar, and can directly charge the traction battery. That sounds pretty good. The Bright Drop van platform. Okay, I got to remember that. I'm going to open a tab for that so I don't... Bright Drop... Is it Zevo? Is that what you're talking about? Interesting. Is this what you're talking about? I think I've seen one of these. Someone had a Bright Drop somewhere. Ultium. Oh, it's GM, so they're going to kill it. Dang it. Hopefully they don't kill it, but I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but the range numbers sound okay. Highway range of 230. Not sure if that's what you meant, but Zevo. I found a 2021 model standard range for 22,000 euros. That'd be a great buy since it has the heat pump and electronic tailgate, I think. Yeah, they added it at a weird time. It wasn't exactly a model year, but yeah, I would definitely look at it first before you commit to buying the whole thing. As someone that's done multiple multi-week car camping trips in my Model Y, the fact that the Cybertruck is worse than the Model Y for car camping is a big letdown. Yeah, that's for sure. That's one thing that would probably talk me out of getting the Cybertruck for camping or van lifing. It's just like, there's not a mid-gate, so you can't really combine the bed space, and the charging curve isn't great, and it's not going to be more efficient than an SUV, so I don't know. It's, it's bad when, in order to justify buying a, huge expensive vehicle, I have to change my lifestyle pretty drastically. It's like, I don't think we need to do that. Let's just look at how we're living our lives right now and find the vehicles that fit those best. For me, that's going to be the Aptera. But it's cool to daydream, I guess. FedEx uses Bright Drop vans in my area. Yeah, I think that's what I saw too. It's FedEx. It's GM, so they're going to kill it. So quotable. Yeah, Google and GM would get along. They like to kill. Google Motors, they like to kill projects all the time. The base camp tent for the Cybertruck isn't too expensive. I don't get the whole tent concept. If it's not going to be HVAC controlled, which it sounds like the Rivan van might be. The R3 and R2 camp, the like kind of squarish, cubish camp tent that goes on the roof. I think theirs has HVAC controls or something, which I'd be more interested in. But if you're going to be camping in the open air and you're not going to have HVAC controls, why do you need to camp on the truck itself? It's like, well, if you're going to be in a tent anyway, just put it on the ground. You can get a tent that's like a fraction of the price and just put it right next to the car. Or there's those tents, I've seen them display that like they're part of the car. So like your hatch is open and then it goes around the hatch and covers part of the ground. But then you can put some stuff on the tailgate or in the trunk or whatever. I would not spend $3,000 on the Cybertruck tent. The big complaint is that it's a complicated setup. Most rooftop tents take seconds. Yeah, I watched a video of a guy setting up the base camp, and it took forever. I was like, oh, God, that's a lot of dang work. No, thank you. Do I think full self-driving is really possible with the current camera placement and the B-pillar? Stupid question, right? No, it's not a stupid question. It's just a loaded question because there's a lot of different ways to answer that. First question is how do you define full self-driving? Because everybody has their own definition. If your definition is like level 5, like it can drive anywhere a human can with nobody in the driver's seat, no. I don't think, for one, I don't think it's legally possible. I think there's a big hurdle with the legality of that happening. Liability wise, and what happens if it's in a collision, and who takes care of it if it gets a flat tire. That's a huge problem that I don't think Tesla's thinking much about. Secondly, camera position, what the hardware is capable of doing or seeing when there's bad weather, that kind of thing. So there's all these strings attached. So level 5, I don't think is possible. Level 4 is a very easy construed autonomy level, because level 4 just means driver optional. So that means Waymo is level 4. But level 4 can be very geofenced. So technically, when you smart summon your Tesla, if you're not looking at it, it's level 4 because it's driving around the parking lot with no one in the driver's seat. So for that split second, okay, it's kind of level 4. It kind of fits that definition. So if we just said level 4 means that within certain geofenced areas, it can drive without a driver in the driver's seat. Maybe if they're very, safe and calculated, I could see maybe Tesla having some level 4 robotaxis within certain regions of San Francisco when the weather's nice during certain times of day. Maybe it could hit level 4 with very, very strict requirements. But I do think that for highway travel, the hardware currently is probably ready for level 3. Legally, it's going to be another issue of whether or not Tesla is actually going to be allowed to ship a software feature that says you don't have to pay attention. But what I would love, dream case scenario right now, would just be you don't have to pay attention when you're on the freeway or when you're on the interstate. When you're in a place where you're not doing hard turns or stopping at stop signs or stopping at stoplights. If it's just the open road for miles and miles and miles, they could make it as strict as they want. They could say it only works when you're on the interstate. It only works when you have to stay straight on your navigation for the next 100 miles. Then yeah, I think the current hardware is perfectly capable. That's when it's the most consistent, the most reliable. It's good at not hitting cars. It'll get in the fast lane if it needs to. It'll move over. Excuse me. It'll move over when it needs to. It is not level 3. No. Sorry, that's not correct. Level 3's definition involves the driver not having to pay attention. Level 3 means the driver has to be there, but they don't have to look at the road. And at no point has Tesla ever claimed you do not have to look at the road or that you don't have to keep your hands on the wheel. So very much still a level 2 autonomous driving system right now. It's a very capable level 2 system. There are some people who have 0 intervention, 0 disengagement drives. I've had a couple, not a lot, but I had a handful in Phoenix, which I understand why it might perform pretty well there, because a lot of Phoenix is just stoplight in a perfect grid, a lot of square streets where you just wait at each stoplight. So it's pretty easy when you just have to go straight for a long time and make 2 turns to get to your destination without any interventions. But yeah, at least the most recent up-to-date definitions of the 5 levels autonomy require attention at level 2, doesn't require attention at level 3, and that would be huge. I would consider that a massive win if Tesla said you don't have to pay attention when you're on the freeway or something. Like when you take the exit, okay, it's going to turn off Tesla Theater and say hands on the wheel, eyes on the road. It can go back to nagging you. But for those huge stretches of roadway where it's just 150 miles of just continue the course, if it could just say, all right, I got it from here. You can watch a movie, pull up Tesla Theater, or go on your phone, do whatever you want. That would be huge. And that's not even close to what Elon's promising. Elon's promising it'll go out and drive you around, make you money, and, you can summon it across the country with no one in the driver's seat. I think the current hardware, level 3 doesn't require attention. It can ask for attention if it needs it, but you haven't hit level 3 until you say you don't have to pay attention anymore. It's going to be so fascinating to see the Robotaxi unveil on August 8th. Will be super telling. Will it have way better camera placement? Will it have LiDAR? I'm fairly confident it won't have LiDAR. If anything, it might have HD radar based on Elon's previous comments, but Elon's been pretty clear from the beginning that LiDAR doesn't make sense for autonomous vehicles. It'd be hilarious if he changed his mind. But I think it'll get delayed, personally. I don't think the event will be on August 8th. The driver has to be able to take over whenever the car requests it. Yeah, that's different. That's not what we have now. The car can request that you take over, but even if the car doesn't request for you to take over, you still have to pay attention. That's what makes it level 2. It would be level 3 if at some point during the drive the Tesla said, okay, you don't have to look at the road. But currently, if I look at the screen in my car, which has the speed on it, if I look at that for too long, it yells at me and beeps at me. It wouldn't be able to deal with approaching another person on a small single country back road where one car will fit on at a time. A lot of those here in Europe. I don't know. There's a lot of things that I thought would trip it up that don't, and then a lot of things I didn't think would trip it up that do. That's kind of the weird thing with FSD, is it's somewhat unpredictable. But yeah, I agree. Europe is a whole nother legal battle. They have a bunch of different requirements there. Sleep in the car while it drives you up to 15 to Las Vegas or San Francisco overnight as an alternative to Delta Airlines ticket would be a great product and ready to launch now, in my opinion. I would just say, as long as it probably will require your attention for city streets. After it takes the exit, it can beep and wake you up. Say, hey, you got to wake up. But if level 3 just said, I have to wake up the driver within 10 seconds. It's not going to do anything where, as long as level 3 doesn't involve, like, I need the driver to take over in the next 1 second. It has to be safe enough that, okay, I'm stuck or I'm confused or I don't know what to do right here. So I'm going to slowly play a chime to, like, wake you up. And then if you're not responsive, the chime gets louder and louder and louder until you wake up and take over. But legally, I don't know if they can do that. I don't think the NHTSA is going to allow them to. So, in the province of British Columbia, Canada, they just banned vehicles capable of level 3 autonomy from public roadways unless they are approved, even if the level 3 isn't being used or enabled for the driver. Sheesh. Yeah, good luck with that one, Tesla. That'd be sort of a hybrid between self-driving car and car rental, as you'd still need to maneuver it onto and off on the freeway. Well, if it's supposed to be so good, I think the idea would be you just have to watch it. You just have to pay attention when it navigates and gets onto the freeway, but you don't have to pay attention once it's on the freeway. I reckon what Sandy Monroe was saying about an infrared camera was interesting. Yeah, there was a certain kind of camera he recommended because it could see in the dark or see through weather or something. I don't know, but I would not be shocked at all if the Robotaxi unveil gets pushed back, because it seems like Elon kind of announced it on a whim, kind of randomly. When you buy a Cybertruck, do they give you a free YouTube channel with it? YouTube channels are free anyway, but yeah. So do I think FSD is really possible with the current camera placement in the B pillar? Probably not. Not really the version Tesla wants. I think best case scenario, if the government is really nice to Tesla and approves everything, we'll probably get a limited form of level 3 where you can watch movies on the freeway. That would be best case scenario for me with the current hardware. I do not see it getting to a point where I could summon it across town, like tell my car to go pick up my parents from the airport all by itself or something. I don't see it. I'm sorry. Not with this legal system and not with this hardware. At level 4, it gets wild. The car literally is allowed to override the driver if it thinks it's smarter than the human. I don't remember that definition. All I remember is level 4 just saying is the driver is optional, but with geofences. So it can work within city limits of a certain place, which already exists. Waymo has been around for years, but just means there doesn't need to be a driver. You probably already covered this earlier, but I think the Robotaxi thing is just to make the Model 2 ramp up. Just to mask the Model 2 ramp up. Yeah, I kind of talked about that in my last video. But I think Elon doesn't care about the $25,000 car. I think he wants to go straight to Robotaxi. He's always wanted that. It's well documented in Walter Isaacson's book that Franz and Lars and other people at Tesla wanted to do a cheaper mass market car, and Elon was like, I don't care about making, the Tesla Corolla. I just want an autonomous vehicle. Elon is sick of trying to sell cars. He would rather just do autonomous ride hailing because that's more exciting to him or something. From complete factory to 350,000 units per year run rate will take at least 8 months. Hence the time during which the cars will only be around as robotaxi trials. Yeah, I just don't know if the software is going to be ready by then for that many robotaxis to be operational, honestly. Yeah, you never know with Elon, because he said actually Smart Summon was almost ready like over a year ago, and it's still not out, so who knows? I think Elon sees little snippets of what goes on at each of his companies and thinks, oh, wow, that's really good. It's probably almost done. And then he leaves. He was there for 10 minutes. That's probably what happened with this whole free month is he tried FSD 12.3 and said, wow, that was amazing. Why aren't more people paying for this? Give everyone a free month, and that'll increase the take rate. And maybe it will to some noticeable degree, but I don't think it'll take off the way he thinks. The thing is, the 25K car has to exist. FSD won't get approved in most places for the next decade, probably. I agree with you. I totally agree that FSD won't be ready, but is that going to stop Elon from unveiling something? No. Didn't stop him from unveiling the Semi, even though that was super late. Didn't stop him from unveiling the Roadster, even though that's still not out. It was unveiled 7 years ago? Close to 7 years ago? It's still not out. They're working on it. Oh, maybe next year, So just because it's being unveiled this year, that doesn't really mean it's anywhere close. And personally, I think the Robotaxi could very likely be a design that is good for ride hailing, but not good as a personally owned vehicle. If they design the Robotaxi kind of like the Zoox, where even from the outside in, it's designed for no one to really take over with a steering wheel, how do you convert a Zoox-like vehicle into a personally owned vehicle? It's not so simple as, well, just add a steering wheel with steer-by-wire. It's like, no, we got to redesign the whole layout of the interior and where the seats go and where they're bolted. And it might be a bit more complicated than we think. That's probably why there's so much friction between Franz and Lars and Elon, because they're all talking about doing personally owned vehicles, and Elon is just super convinced that FSD is possible, and it may not be. So I agree, they'll probably have to do the 25K car because they're slowly going to realize that FSD is way harder than they originally thought. But I don't think that they'll prioritize it. I think they'll eventually come around to it after they realize robotaxis aren't ready. But I hope they design a platform that's really easily convertible. Do you think they'd put those large cameras on the robotaxis like Waymo? No, it's not really good for your aero anyway, and it's probably more expensive, so probably not. The 25K vehicle will exist. You could argue it already does. People are buying Model 3s for less than that now, so you might be able to make the case it wouldn't change all that much. Elon also say they can get a Mars base within 20 years. Oh, yeah. He said all kinds of stuff. But anyway, I got to get going here. I appreciate your guys' super chats and all your fun questions. This is always a good time. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And stay tuned for lots more videos in the works. Got a pretty big one, hopefully dropping tomorrow. And if not, the day after. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care, all. Bye-bye.